Lensekholile ungangcolisi
Okay, so now we go there.
Then will you send me the presentation, but
Yes, I did send the presentation.
okay.
Oh. Yeah, yeah. No.
And then you have the speaker so that we can hear.
Yeah.
If she says something, and then yeah, we can hear.
Sure, good.
Wow. No,
Yeah, ke nyaka go change background.
And I see other guys have a game. Terry, I've got guys that I sent an email to, but I put all of them under BCC. Now I want to like send all of them the link.
But do you still remember them?
No, I have them here. But when I do reply all, it doesn't include them.
Yeah, it's blind copy.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just,
Oh no, Maynak is here.
Maynard is there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, I am here. Thank you. Good morning.
Morning, Minette.
Hello, Maynard.
How are you doing?
Oh, okay. I'm sending the information now. The next minute you have the correct one. That will take you.
Okay. Project o dula ka mogone.
Yeah, and then
O tla mpotsa gore o bona project le sharp ne ha o le ka go, but this looks fine.
then my presentation, where's my presentation? Share.
Is it on email?
close a lot of those things so that.
Good morning, Dumelang, Dimachironi, Absheni, Huyamura. Thank you so much for joining us. A very warm welcome to you all. And this is a very exciting webinar that we anticipate will be of much value to you. So welcome to the NEF Business TV. I'm your host, Cindy Mabi. We've invited practitioners in the film and television industry space, funders, those that assist with the development of the concept, holding your hand until it culminates in the distribution phase. So thanks to the National Empowerment Fund, Growing Black Economic Participation. We also have our shareholder ministry represented here, the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. We have our fellow or sister DFI, Development Funding Institute, the IDC, the National Film and Video Foundation. We have distributors and a whole host of other experts that will share on this platform on the funding of the film and television industry. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. We are simulcasting live on various social media platforms, and the webinar will be available as a video on demand on our website. So you're most welcome to share the link and invite as many participants as possible. So just to kick us off and to set the scene for lights, camera, action, we'll give you a taste of the investment that the National Empowerment Fund has done, co-funding with other partners as well in creating a value, much needed employment in this creative space. So we'll kick off with a trailer from Knuckle City, which is a multi-award winning motion picture that the NEF and other funders had contributed towards. So I'll just ask our technical director, Johan, if he'll play the clip, and that will then set the scene for us. Just to quickly do housekeeping while we wait for the technical crew, please be reminded to put your cell phone on mute and to also have your video and your microphone unmuted when in earnest you are about to speak. The other point to note as well is that certain speakers rather are going to have to excuse themselves before 1 o'clock, but everybody else has committed to being with us for the next 2 hours. So again, my name is Cindy Mabi. You're welcome to post your questions on the chat room, or if you're on social media, on Facebook, it is the National Empowerment Fund. On Twitter and Instagram, it's at NEF Core, NEF CORP. That's on social media. So our technical director in the studio, I'm not alone. We have Meneer Johan Fouchier, who will then play the Knuckle City clip as promised. Johan, it's over to you.
Sorry, Joel, please mute yourself. Apologies, there's no sound on the video, and there's a few of us in the chat with the same problem.
So thank you very much again for staying with us here on NEF Business TV. My name is Cindy Mabi. So if you've just joined us, we're showing you a trailer of Knuckle City, a multi-award-winning co-funded feature film that the NEF, the ITC, the National Film and Video Foundation, Eastern Cape Development Corporation, and many others had participated or made possible. So without any further ado, we do have Mr. Joel Mpila, who is the corporate fund manager, who will speak on the NEF and the funding in this specific sector from the mentorship. We know that the industry is very averse to debt funding. It's more inclined towards grant funding. So how does it all play out, and how do we realize the dreams of creatives in having their product on multiple platforms? So Joel, good morning to you, and thank you so much for joining us. You have exactly 10 minutes. We are strict on time. So if you will just, I suppose, jump in specifically where the NEF or the part that we play in funding the film and television industry. It's over to you, Joel. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're all well this morning. I've got a presentation that I would like to plug and take you through, just to share with you some of the milestones that the NEF has been able to achieve to date and some of the good work that we've been able to deliver. Just bear with me, give me a sec. I'm just going to plug quickly. Thank you very much. I hope everyone can see the presentation. Once again, my name is Joel Mpela. I'm the acting fund manager within Umunoto Fund, within the NEF. The mandate of the NEF, was, the mandate of the NEF, is to, as a thought leader, is to drive, promote and facilitate Black economic participation through provision of financial and non-financial support to Black-owned and managed businesses, as well as promote the culture of saving and investment among Black people. We are the only DFI exclusively mandated to grow BEE. In terms of the funding thresholds that we are able to do, we start from 250,000 rand all the way up to 75 million. So this sector is an important sector for us. It talks to some of the key deliverables as I've alluded to this mandate. Of course, we are not doing it alone. We are doing it with partnerships and partners in the sector. The partners are made of co-funders as well as the completion bond guarantors. So as Cindy alluded earlier, that the sector is normally perceived to be high risk. Therefore, we need everyone on board to be able to deliver innovative solutions and assist accordingly in the sector. So we do have DTIC as a key stakeholder. We do know their role is very important. We also have the Department of Arts and Culture, one of our partners in terms of the fund that we are managing here at the NEF. We do co-fund with ECDC, very critical partner in the funding schemes. We do also have IDC as a co-funder, co-sister DFI, very important role that they play in terms of managing some of the funding risks. We do have indigenous film distribution in terms of access to markets. They do play a very critical role. We also have KwaZulu-Natal Film Commission. They are also very important in the sector. Holland, as the completion bond guarantor, very critical, Maru Film Services, and as well as other stakeholders that I did not mention now. So it's very important that we work together and we're able to deliver solutions. Next slide. In terms of the key success factors within the NEF, we call them the NEF's performance and investment criteria. We are measured through empowerment dividend. Empowerment dividend is made of achievement of broad-based Black economic empowerment in the transactions within the sector. We were also measured in terms of the ownership, management control, employment equity. We also measured on the Black women empowerment. On that, we also have a specialized women empowerment fund. We are also measured in terms of the job creation and retaining, very key measure for us, given where we are at this point in time in this country. We need to create jobs, and this industry is one of those that is very critical to help us create the jobs. We also measured in terms of the sectors that are growth sectors as defined by our stakeholder, our shareholder, the government. We are also measured in terms of the geographical spread. We need to be able to invest, even outside the key major provinces, being outside Gauteng, Western Cape and Durban, to make sure that empowerment, can go across the country to some of those provinces that are less, privileged in terms of economic activity. We also have to make sure that we make a return just to make sure that we are sustainable and we can be able to carry through investing and supporting these industries, including this sector. Just in terms of the background of the fund that we are managing here at the NEF, in 2016, we went into partnership with the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. At that time, it was DAC. The fund was for the 3-year period, and with various injections. We started with 20 million that was injected into the NEF for the NEF to carry funding in the sector. Subsequently, we received another 30 million, and then 50 million to make sure that we invest. The fund is named Venture Capital Fund. As you can see, we were able to take some of the risks to make sure that we can support the industry, create some of the opportunities within the sector. Of course, the fund aimed to readdress some of the past imbalances in the sector. Some of the challenges are lack of financing instruments for the creative industries, and also we needed to contribute to economic growth as well as jobs. So the loans that we provided started from 250,000 rand all the way to 75 million. The partnership was based on the 60-40 split, where the NEF put contribution of 60% of the total fund size, and then the DSC provided 40%. Just in terms of the modalities of the fund that we are managing in total is a size of 250 million, quite sizable amount of money. And those are some of the splits that we received from DSCA, our partner in the fund, and then the NEF matched according to the 60-40 split. Now, in terms of investing, we did invest the funds accordingly in support of the sector. So in terms of the subsectors that we provided funding to, it's film and television production, radio production, publishing, crafts, music, performing arts, fashion design, radio, painting, art, and galleries. And the instruments that we deployed in the sector was the venture capital loan facilities in support of startup businesses, high risk businesses. We secondly also provided revolving credit facilities to some of the existing businesses in the sector in support of those businesses through working capital facility. We were also able to assist in terms of bridging finance. These are the grant funding that DTIC will provide. As you all, or some of you will know, they are based on milestones. So there was a role for us through this fund to provide bridging finance facility. We did also support entrepreneurs in terms of acquisitions of assets through the installment sale agreement. As you can see, those are innovative instruments in the sector. Largely in the past, we never saw such instruments in the sector. However, through our involvement, we were able to bring this innovation funding to be able to support the sector. Just to highlight some of the silent features of our partnership with our partners, Department of Sports, Arts and Culture. So the partnership extended to financial and non-financial support, meaning that we would have been able to package some of the transactions beyond what normally one can do in terms of funding. So we'll assist in preparing the business plans in support of the entrepreneurs in the industry. We did also provide training and capacity sessions to the entrepreneurs to make sure that they can package their submissions accordingly to make sure that they qualify. We were also able to provide entrepreneurship training in the sector just to make sure that the participants they are aware of what is needed. What is this so-called commercial viable transaction? What are the things that needs to be ticked to get there? So we did provide that support. We're also able to provide mentorship and back office support through our post-investment division, so that once we invest, we're able to make sure that the businesses are run sustainably, they're able to repay, and over and above that, as they are sustainable, the shareholders are able then to also make some of the returns. Now, through our post-investment, we normally do regular visits. We monitor the performance on a month-to-month basis. We do receive management accounts just to make sure that numbers that were projected initially, they are indeed achieved. And those are interrogated. They are also reported to the committee, where there's robust discussions, and there's also further guidance to the entrepreneurs that we have supported. We've also provided access to markets, where some of our investees, we took them to national tourism in Daba just to showcase the productions that they have done. Some of them, they've participated at the cancer film market. We're also able to support others through incubation and as well as an online business tool within the NEF. So those are some of the other modalities of our agreement with our partners as how then we supported the sector. Now this slide now talks to the demand that we have encountered here at the NEF. So we have received over 1.4 billion worth of applications. It's a quite considerable worth of the applications that we received. We were able to screen 87% of those applications, which the value is 1.2 billion. And we declined 83%. It's worth of just over 1 billion. And then we progressed 9.4% to DD, due diligence stage. This were worth over 116 million. And then we were able to approve 7.5% worth of 92 million. As you can see, the slide really highlights that there are challenges and opportunities in the sector. So you can see there's a huge demand, but however, in terms of the success rate, the numbers are quite low. So this presents us an opportunity for in future to make sure that with the partners that I've highlighted earlier, we continue working together to make sure that the gap is closed and everyone who comes through, we are able to support and make sure that they grow their businesses and they get the required funding. Of course, opportunities goes with challenges, of course, and hence why we are here today to engage and to make sure that we find solutions to some of these challenges. Challenge number one on our side, we saw a greater traction in the film and television sector than other sectors that I've spoken to. So that's a challenge for us because we are about inclusivity. We need to see broader participation across the entire industry. And majority of the applicants that came to NEF, as I highlighted in the previous slide, they require more of non-financial support. So they require access to markets, they require mentoring, they require project preparation. So those are some of the challenges that we have encountered. A lot of these applications, they're actually adverse to debt funding. A lot of them, they require software funding like grants and them. So that actually says that we need to work together to improve, to make sure that they are commercially viable and the debt can go in and be repaid and the shareholders can still be able to make money. Some of the milestones that needed to be met before drawdowns, those are some of the challenges because without meeting the milestones, there was no way we could be able to disperse. So it was a challenge for us. And also there's a high need for the industry as industry players to then seek additional innovative funding to be able to support the industry accordingly. Without saying COVID also thrown spanner in the works because the whole industry had to close down. Some of the CPs could not be met on time, but however, now we are seeing the economy is opening up. We then going to be able to disperse some of those deals. In terms of the socio-economic impact that the fund was able to unlock, we funded 18 transactions worth of 92 million in the sector. As our focus is Black people, the money went to support Black people. Just over 8 million went to support Black women businesses. We were able also to create jobs, just over 5,000 jobs that were created, and about 82 existing jobs were supported through this fund. We were able also to leverage third-party funding. For every rand that the fund was able to inject into the economy, we were able to generate R1.58, very considerable amount that we were able to crowd in the sector. Again, just to touch again on the lessons, some of them I've already touched on. Just in the interest of the time, I'm not going to repeat some of those I've touched on. Then to highlight, when applicants come to us, what are the things that are key to make a transaction, commercially viable? The slide talks to, the client filling NEF application form. It's available on our website. We also have hard copies as well in our offices, all our regional offices, we have hard copies. Also, there's a need for the review of the script. We normally say, there has to be a screen doctor who read the script and make sure that it's well sound and the script can be able to sell. That needs to be done. There has to be independent review of the production budget. Normally, when we have a completion bond, we will then rely on some of our partners to make sure that the budget really is being done accordingly. There's been a crossing of T's and C's on the budget. The finance plan must be sound, must show that it's able to repay all the instrument and also make a return some of the shareholders. We also need to make sure that there's a production schedule. All the key factors are factored accordingly. The time is factored accordingly, the production schedule. Cash flow schedule as well needs to be in place. There's also need for income streams to be prepared and reviewed by other parties in the application, especially across other territories outside the country. We need also to see a release schedule. We need to see the recoupment waterfall in terms of the cash flow waterfall, who get paid first and who get paid last. That's very important for us to be attracted to such a transaction. We also need to make sure that there's a distribution agreement or letters of intent, which can then be converted into binding agreements. This will talk to the volumes that are there, the prices that are there, just to make sure that the model then can work from those numbers stipulated in the distribution agreement. We also need to have a completion guarantee or letter of intent. And again, we need to see through the agreement with regard to a collection agency agreement or a letter of intent. Then we also look at the talent, the crew and cast, just to make sure that the personnel that is there can sell the film and the business can work accordingly. That's just to highlight key requirements when you come to NEF to approach us for funding. Thank you very much. I hope that I've managed to run quickly within the time allocated. Over to you, Cindy.
Thanks so much, Joel, for that presentation. I think it covers all the various aspects of the film and television industry, purely because sometimes as creatives, you have this wonderful idea that you think international franchise, and then only to find that you haven't really put in the building blocks. So this really assists, and I hope that our participants will find value in how the National Empowerment Fund and our other co-funders assist in getting your product to market. A very quick question, and I know we do investee training around the province or around the country, and on an annual basis. There was a question about entrepreneurship training, Joel. I'm not going to bother you with that so much as in the interest of time, but I'll just say to the participants and those that want to know more, please go to our website. That's NEF Corp, nefcorp.co.za. And we also have our sister DFI, Development Funding Institute, the Industrial Development Corporation. There is Mr. Maijang Mpirwane, who's the head of media and audiovisual, to talk us through, I suppose, primarily the pre-production stage, which is your incubation, developmental stage, and then how does the whole value chain work out from production, post-production, distribution, and what role does the IDC then play in this space? Maijang? Good morning.
Whoa. Hi. Hi.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Hi.
No, don't beg my pardon. Instead of Maijang, you have the pleasure of seeing my lovely face.
Yes, no, welcome. Please introduce yourself and your topic. And your 10 minutes starts now. 3, 2, 1, cue.
Okay. My name is Mpoma Ringa. I'm the media specialist at the IDC. And I work in the film and audio visual unit. I think simply I will just go to, what do I say, to the presentation that I have. It's a bit bulky for 10 minutes, but I will speak fast through it. I'm quite good at speaking fast, I'd like to believe, but I hope I will capture the gist of it. I'm trying to share my screen. When you hear me sounding hesitant, I'm looking for the button. There we go. Okie dokie. So, and you will see the presentation says as presented by Mai Zhang. Kindly replace that by Mpho and believe that the quality is the same and the deliverer is prettier. So the role of the unit, what we aim to be in the South African media industries really is to be like the driving force of sustainable, and that's a key word, sustainable media and audiovisual value chain in South Africa. So we want to support producers that are producing locally relevant shows, but that have legs to travel overseas. Our market is relatively small, and trying to recoup from everything from the South African market may leave us lacking. But if we showcase our work and we take it beyond our borders, we get a bigger market and a higher chance of recoupment. We also fund infrastructure such as production and post-production facilities and broadcast studios, and the creation and acquisition of TV platforms, radio and digital. We also are interested in looking at the development of new or alternative distribution systems. So if you're out there and you're thinking, I am the next Netflix and this is the opportunity to give them a run for their money, we are the people to approach. And we basically want to support the media chain, the media industry along the entire value chain. I just realized a small mistake I made of not bringing water because I'm getting dry. So give me a moment. Okie dokie. So we are also geared to facilitate complex financing. So don't think, oh, it's too complicated. There's so many funders, and it won't. We have the experience and the team to deliver an intricate financing deal. We also want projects that support greater transformation within the audiovisual chain. We want to see projects that show youth ownership, women ownership, and in meaningful roles, not well, we have a youth partner and we want to see them not only in meaningful roles, but also to grow within the production. So as with each production, we do not expect someone to be where they were, where they entered. We want visible transformation, visible, measurable change. And we have a great team that really has an in-depth understanding of the industry. My role as a media specialist at the IDC was that I come from the industry, having worked in production. And because the team is mostly accountants, then I would bring the industry insight, the editorial insight. What I found when I got here is a team that is so immersed in the world of film. Yes, their outlook will always be particularly financial, but they actually really do immerse themselves in understanding what is going on, what the trends are, how things are evolving, what the needs of the industry are, and what certain things mean. So they're quite, in as much as they're accountants, they are quite well versed in film. As a unit, we would like to diversify our investment more. So yes, the film's industry, the film is our core, but we'd also like to build everything around it. So beyond the film, who are the people that are shooting these films? Where are we getting the equipment? What facilities are we using? What we want to support the industry in its broadness. And we also want to build partnerships. There are the existing natural partnerships that we would have with the NEF, with the DTI, with the NFVF, but we always strive to build partnerships that actually encourage growth and economic viability, as well as facilitate access to diverse platforms. I mean, COVID has done an about change. Things have changed drastically for every industry, not just film. So how people consume content, how people produce content has shifted, and the rules of the game have changed. But we are saying we are open to exploring the opportunities that say, how can we optimize what is there and enhance South Africa's exposure, like the exposure of South African content. So we have different types of funding. We do cash flow DTI incentives. I will not even dwell on that because Joel explained extensively how that works. We have venture loans, and we ensure that IP ownership remains in the hands of the filmmaker. And we have quasi-equity, which is higher risk and a higher dividends for the IDC, but then I guess higher cost for the applicant. So what we look for when you approach us is the concept. What are you selling us? What film are you giving us? Your finance plan. Who are the people who are co-funding? IDC never finds in isolation. Who are the other co-funding partner? What are their terms? What are they bringing to the table? What do they want out of the deal? Your revenue plan. So now once we funded this plan, how do you want to, this film, how do you see it generating income? Which platforms are you going to put it in? Traditionally, we've always had people going, my film will start at cinema because that's the big launch. That's what we all kind of dream of. It will start at the cinema, and after that, it will go to DSTV box office, and it will go to, so that kind of plan, this is how I will generate my income through this film. And that again has shifted. So we need to rethink and creatively around that. The company structure. So we, because IDC is strong on empowerment, we need to understand who we are empowering, what their role is, what their level of ownership and investment is. And also we'd like them to know your timelines. The application process is quite rigorous and time consuming. So we appreciate that we would like people to give us enough time to do what we need to do. We provide a minimum of 1 million and a maximum of 1 billion in funding, the equivalent of, but it will only be 49% of the production budget, and that would be of the South African spend, with the intention to make our capital back and a return. I'll actually quickly gloss over this thing because it's too intricate. But once we've had a basic assessment, we do a deep dive, which we call a due diligence into your proposition. So we want to see its marketability. And this is key for us. When we're saying commercial viability, South Africa is great at telling stories. We have the most beautiful, warm and fuzzy stories. We have the most shocking stories, emotional stories. We've got the stories intact. But what we haven't been good at is capturing the market that will pay to watch those stories. We need to kind of then look at how marketable our content is. And that's where the marketing deep dive goes in. Where are you going to sell it? Who will you sell it to? And this is when people think of the story first and then the market second. I would like to encourage thinking of it concurrently. Like who wants to see this? Who needs to see this? Who's willing to get out of their comfort zone to come and pay to watch this thing? The technical viability, if you're going to make this thing, do you have everything, that the technical know-how and the skills required to do this? And the financial viability, which is key, because IDC funding is recoupable. We need to know that it is, that the way you're doing it is optimizing the budget, and you'll be able to get enough revenue to pay back all the fees. This is an example of a typical finance plan of how we would have in a film, with like a percentage coming from the DTI, IDC financing part of cash flowing the DTI, giving you a gap loan of 1.5 million, producers deferring their fees. This is also a significant part where producers need to defer certain parts of their fees. I guess it's also a vote of confidence in their own work to say it will, and it's also their own way of investment. In an ideal world, we'd like to see producers making a film, making so much money out of it so that when they make the next film, they're like, IDC, I need a loan of 10 million, but here's my 1 million to start. So this is an example of what a typical finance plan would look like. And again, Joel spoke to this, the recoupment plan. We really like to be high up there in the recoupment plan. After a film has gone, there's so many fees that go with it. But after that, after the fees, then we'd ideally like to work to a place where we see where IDC gets its money back. These guidelines are actually what I just went into in depth with when I was going over the overview, because I was rushing through it. So I'm going to jump right towards the end to the lessons learned. I'm I've already mentioned one of my key ones that I've realized, which was the commercial viability of South African content, and the fact that we don't think of the market primarily, we think of it as a secondary concern, secondary, it's always secondary, the story is first. But some of the lessons learned was the challenges with DTI incentive. If we've cash flowed it, that means it is for, that money then is not profit. It means then it needs to go back into the IDC loan. We have also learned that if we don't rank high enough at certain, on the recoupment schedule, then we will not recoup because of the ability of the film to recoup. So when we do recoup, we would like to be as high up as possible. Because of the lack of funding, huge amounts of pre-sales are actually used for the production, and would actually ideally like to go to a place where a certain amount of the pre-sales just go through as sales, and we've got some money that there's still some room left to make money for the film. We didn't have direct relationships with distributors internationally, so we would always have the producer tell us what the distributor says on what they want, but we're actually learning to forge those relationships and make them stronger so that we really do understand what the market wants, so that as we advise and we help clients, we're helping them understanding what is wanted in, what is done in and accepted in the industry. I've already also spoken about this, the film made for local consumption with not much international markets earmarked for exploitation. Our market is small and has only so much that it can return to us. We have seen great films that we really believed were cool, conceptually solid, beautifully shot, technically sound, excellent directing, award-winning stuff that really move the industry, but they do not do much in terms of exploitation. And so that's our key focus now, is actually increasing our opportunity at recoupability. The IDC has been in existence for a long time, and we have contributed to the growth of the industry consistently, and we will continue to. And it is our reason for being as a unit. But we want to then take it to the next level and say, let's make it commercially viable. You know, when we don't want to leave filmmakers with just a production fee. Can we start making money out of the content that we do make? Thank you. I was doing a race for time, so I don't know what my time is like. If I still have time, I'm very good at rambling. I can talk.
A typical creative, and I love that you give us the insights as well in terms of your expertise, being a specialist in the production, pre-production stage, the vibe that you have in on set, etc. And Paul, we really appreciate it. That's Mpho Maringa, is a media specialist at the Industrial Development Corporation. Please stand by, Mpho. I'm just going to give you some time to maybe ponder on the questions we received on our chat room, and then we'll cross to Mr. Joel Mpila, who will then also field the questions. It is an interactive platform. We're not just having talking heads. We're here to try and find solutions as a collective. One question that always stands out is that youth participation, notwithstanding that there are limited resources, one question is on, if you don't have the top gear, as it were, and the crew to put together a decent production, does the IDC fund productions that are done on smart devices? Another question is around the red tape, and how are you able to maneuver, or what kind of tips can you give our participants on getting their application expedited, or at least in a short time as possible? And another one is, what is it that causes the disapproval of an application? So Mpho, ponder on that while we cross back to Joel, who's also got a few questions from our participants. Again, Joel, welcome and thanks so much for joining us. I think the issue around what causes the disapproval of an application also applies to us, the NEF.
Thank you, Cindy. So what causes the disapproval is an issue of commercial viability. If it's a film, for example, it has to be commercially viable. All the elements that I've spoken to in terms of the markets, the distribution agreement, be the pre-sales, needs to be in place. When we do the financial model, we need to be clear as what will come in as a revenue, what expenses are there, and what is the level of profitability. So the whole business model needs to work for the business to be, commercially viable. If it's viable, then we're happy to finance. There's no way we can decline, a proposal that's it's viable. So viability really is where the issue, is, and that's where a lot of work needs to be done. And we are saying, with all the partners, the grant funders, you need to try and have them in the scheme such that, the debt doesn't then overburden, the business, and the business can be able to then afford. So in the main, the viability is the reason why there's such a high decline. But over and above that, I alluded that, NEF has supporting mechanisms. We do have pre-investment division where we, analyze these business plans. We do highlight, the reasons why it is not viable. And then we also encourage some of the entrepreneurs to go and do a bit of work, engage the market, source pre-sales, source opportunities. And once they are ready, then they can come back. So at the NEF, straight no. However, you will be encouraged to do some more work and then come back. We can then reconsider. Hopefully in future, then we can be able to finance you. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Joe. Is there anything else, I suppose, that we can assist with, especially when it comes to young people who are interested in the sector? One question was around if you have only a smart device, for example, you don't have the equipment for productions, at which level, what is the threshold where the NEF only starts participating in? We know that there's CEDA and other DFIs that people can consider. If you just briefly want to explain the role of the NEF in that regard.
So youth, it's very key to us, for the future of this country. We do encourage, youth participation. Yes, there might be, issues of access to markets. We do also, just assist the entrepreneurs that we fund to be able to access those markets and to make the transactions commercially, viable. So as NEF, we are very hands-on. We normally get very excited when we see youth applications, and we normally go beyond normal funding, process. So we are open for business. We need youth applicants to come through. And normally we work with them and we encourage them to do more so that they are commercially viable and they can access the funding. Thank you.
Well, again, thank you so much for your time. We're going to go back now to Mpho Maringa, who's a media specialist at the Industrial Development Corporation. Mpho, just around the red tape, I know there's, these industries typically are well established and hugely regulated. It might be frustrating for creatives, but it is the mandate or the framework within we have to work in. So the question to you was, get rid of the red tape, and again, what is it that makes applicants unsuccessful in their journey?
Okay, I was actually furiously noting the questions on the side. So you're quite right in terms of the red tape. There's processes that IDC as an institution has certain mechanisms and governance principles that guide it. And those are the rules within which we function that then help them control or measure how things are going. So the red tape is something that we also have to work through. The best we can do is talk you through it and help you through. What I do know, or we've tried to do quite successfully with certain people, is guide you on how to successfully go through the red tape, rather than then take it away. How things do not get approved, a certain level of it is basically that a film will have a budget of 10 million and it will only possibly make and this will be from sales estimates made from reputable distributors and exhibitors and sales agents, and it will only be able to make like 8 million back, which means the IDC money will not be recoupable. as a funder, we cannot even take a paper up that does not show profit. So if it does not show profit at the beginning, it will not get approved when we take it to Exco. So we need to know. And in some instances, you just know that you can tell from what the presentation has said and the presenter has given, the budget and everything else and the finance plan and what it can do as a film. And you know that the recoupment capability of this film is quite low. Therefore, it will not be able to cover the loan that IDC is going to give. And we can't, it would be reckless lending to borrow something that cannot be afforded. Do we have any consideration for, and someone said, do we have micro budgets and do we have any consideration for emerging filmmakers? These things are almost tiered, I must say. So I think even with our other funding, there's certain things like with other departments, IDC doesn't fund from 6 million. For everything else, you would go to a CIFA. There are other institutions that are there, so we share the burden with different institutions. So your NFVF gives you up to 1.2 million. I'm sure they might have reviewed those, but they're 1.2 million. But I think at some point, we just need to understand that maybe then I need to go to the IDC at a certain point of my production career. And there are certain things that we are considering, and we do have programs that do consider emerging filmmakers, such as the Emerging Black Filmmakers Transformation Fund, which we run in conjunction with the ETI and the NFVF, which is our low budget film. And that comes at about 6 million. It's a 6 million film budget. So within the boundaries of the mandate of the IDC and what it's able to do and not do, we really do try to accommodate as much as possible, but we do not want to create liabilities for filmmakers by getting them into a debt they cannot necessarily afford. Cheryl said something about the industry and growing appreciation for South African films, and I hear you and I agree with you fully. We all have to play our parts. So the funders and the bigger bodies need to kind of begin growing appreciation for South African content. But then again, then the filmmakers as well need to then be on their path and understand what viewers do want. So it's something that we need to work with symbiotically together. I don't know if I don't believe we've been doing it particularly well. And I know we've had different efforts from different bodies to do this, but there is still room for improvement. But you're definitely right. It is a need to actually make South African films flourish. There is something on my screen that's blocking my view. Sorry.
All right, important. No, I think, yeah, you've covered quite, I think, a substantial amount of information regarding the application process. We do have to move on to our other speakers as well. Really, really appreciate it. And I hope that the, thespians and creatives will be encouraged to, go through the hoops, as it were, as difficult as it may be, but this is the regulation that we cannot maneuver out of. It is how things are established, and for you to have your dreams realized, engage with the National Empowerment Fund, which is our host. And if you've just joined us, this is NEF Business TV. We exist to grow Black economic participation together with strategic partners as well. So our next speaker is Ms. Ziyanda Macengwane, who's the Manager for Production and Development at the KwaZulu-Natal Film Commission. Ziyanda, thank you so much for joining us. If we can see your picture, and if you unmute your microphone, you have 10 minutes and your time starts now. Good morning, or good afternoon, rather.
Well, it's still the morning, but thank you, Cindy. Well, my name is Ziyanda Macengwane. I come from the beautiful province of KwaZulu-Natal. I am the Production and Development Manager at the KZN Film Commission. Our mandate as the Film Commission is to be a funding support for filmmakers and producers, to build a skills base through increased productivity and production activity in the province, to develop and showcase local content, especially KZN local content, to develop talent there, locations and infrastructure, and overall stimulate the growth in the film industry. We do this through funding. So our film fund was It started in 2014, and since then we've had like really great successes. And even though we are a regional funder, we don't only fund KZN filmmakers and producers, we also fund any lucrative productions that come outside the province and also outside South Africa. Even though South Africa has the official and formalized co-productions, with the international countries like the UK and Canada, to mention just a few, we also still support filmmakers that want to co-produce with countries that we don't have official co-production treaties with. So we have been working with Nigeria, we've been working with Kenya, we've been working with, well, the UK is official. So we have projects that, we are funding that have co-productions with those other countries. So our main focus in funding is we fund feature films, we fund animation projects, we fund short films, we fund TV series, we fund made-for-TV programs. Those are the low budget ones, but we decided to change them to call them made-for-TV. We also fund documentaries. And we've had, like I said, we've had some successes. I mean, we've funded films such as Keeping Up with the Kandasamis. They've had 2 installments there that we funded, which actually were a success. So I'm going to brag about these ones because, even though it's hard and we understand, it's hard at this point in South Africa for films to make a profit, they've made a profit. The 2 films that they've produced, that we funded, they have paid back, the money that we had loaned to them. And so we funded Love Lives Here, Beyond the River, 3 Days to Go, Asina Mali, Deep End, those are just a few that I can mention. In terms of documentaries, we funded Buddha in Africa, Zulu Return. We funded a documentary called Documentally, which was about, doctors, maybe like young doctors, who work long hours in hospitals and the repercussions thereof. And in terms of short films, we funded short films like The Letter Reader, which has been a huge success. It has traveled. We've funded In the Light of Fire and a few. And TV series, Durban Beach Rescue was a TV series about, the lifeguards in basically just like a life, a day in the life of a lifeguard in Durban. But the focus was, when it really gets busy, if anyone has been in Durban around December, you can see how crazy it is. So basically the series, which was also actually in 2 parts, and they were covering just the the craziness and how lifeguards have to work hard. And I'm emphasizing this because like those are like kind of our Durban KZN projects. We funded Made in Africa, which was a fashion program. It had a lot of African fashion designers that were competing for a prize. We funded some a documentary called Oceans, which was covering the oceans, just basically the oceans in South Africa, and which was like really a success as well. Most of these have won awards, so we're really proud of the work that we've done in the past 5 years. So I'll just go through just a few things in terms of the amounts that we fund. For feature films, our max is 1.5 million. For TV series, our max is R1 million. For documentaries, we max at 350. For short films at 250. So anyway, one of the reasons I'm mentioning this is again to also highlight the partnerships, like everyone has been highlighting. We don't expect filmmakers to only come and request funding from us. We also expect them to go to our other partners, the DTI, the NFEF, the IDC, and also we work with the bonding agencies to ensure that the people are top shape with their budgets, and we know that the film will be produced in the end. We've developed a whole lot of projects. We quite easy when it comes to development. because we look at the concept, basically, we look at the viability of the concept, but we're very strict with production. So in terms of production, you have to, make sure that your script is commercially viable, that it has audience appeal, that, you have a distributor already or a broadcaster. We don't fund if you don't have those major things. We look at the team, we look at, the capacity of the team, the experience of the team, and also in terms of, the big amounts that we fund, those are loans, those are not grants. So we do expect, people to pay back. So with feature films, with TV series, with animation, we do expect, those to be paid back. Even though I'm going to be honest, we haven't had a lot of success, but again, like I said, understandably, it's because of where we are in South Africa in terms of, the film industry, but we will get there. So our other focuses are training, because we understand that, we can't, especially we are in KZN and we want to develop, the province in KZN. So we still have quite a bit to do in terms of training. So we train and upskill filmmakers and aspirant filmmakers. So we have programs, for instance, in script writing. We have programs in technical, like in terms of camera work, editing. So we look at those, and also we have like also a program we call FITI, which is like one of our special programs whereby we take recent graduates from KZN, and we teach them, how to make films, so we just upskilling them, because, sometimes even though, higher institutions of higher learning have really been trying to, to make film a hands-on experience, even, while teaching, some of them don't necessarily focus on that. So what we do is we then get those filmmakers, and we getting them to get hands-on training. So we're training them to produce films. And we also, support small businesses. So what we actually do is we have programs whereby we support SMMEs to ensure that, they grow, because, the whole point really is growth. One of the reasons, again, that we don't only fund filmmakers and producers in KZN is also that we would like, those skills to be imparted to our KZN people. So when we fund a film that, promises to film in KZN, we look at things like how many KZN people are they going to work with, and who in KZN. So we're very strict in that, because sometimes we find that, people make all these promises, before we fund, and then once we fund, sometimes the story changes, and, sometimes people will come up with excuses like, oh, I couldn't get the crew, I couldn't get the suitable crew in KZN. And I mean, understandably, we are still growing the industry in KZN, but we really push and we try to encourage for filmmakers that are shooting in KZN to also, upskill our people. While I'm on that, so one of the really things that we are really strict with is that you need to spend 50% of the budget in KZN. So for productions, for instance, if you are going to be shooting in KZN, if we are funding you, we expect you to spend 50% of your overall budget, not just the 1.5 if it's a feature film that we are funding. And we've had, quite a lot of challenges. I know there's probably people in this platform who we've had, challenges with, who could not, meet those requirements after we've funded them. But, we all try to resolve, the issues and make sure that we still keep the relationships and we move forward. So due to that, we recently stopped funding projects and development, because, we realized that we're not very strong as yet as an industry in terms of script editors and, writers. So now what we actually were realizing was that if we're funding a project that is outside KZN, they get a writer in Gauteng or Western Cape, and then they will have to find a script editor again in their province, or, and so then it was really very hard for people to meet that 50% of KZN spend. So we try to also push in terms of distribution. So we've had some, relationships with the distributors, and we also try to assist our projects when it comes to distribution, to work with the either distributors or the broadcasters. We've also, had special projects that we fund with our other partners. For instance, we have a youth and women project that we fund annually that we partner with NFVF on. At this moment, we are working on short films that we're partnering with BET, and some made-for-TV programs that we also in partnership with the SABC on. So, we're really just trying to keep those partnerships, but we do understand one of the major things that we need to focus on now is marketing and distribution. Because, it's one thing to say we want to fund people and we want them to, sustain themselves, and we want the industry overall to be sustainable. But, we actually can see that if we have, we're falling short basically on distribution, that our films are not really going to be going anywhere, and people will probably not make money still, and then we'll keep funding the same productions. And at some point, we actually really hoping that most of the productions that we fund, that those production houses will be able to self-sustain at some point. Talking about self-sustenance again, one of the other recent things that we are doing now is funding slates. So we have right now a factual slate and a fiction slate, and the reason we introduced that was because we felt like we need to at least find ways and means for production houses, like for a production house, whoever basically gets the slate, to be able to support themselves for at least 3 years. So we have the factual slate and the fiction slate that will now be going on for 3 years. So yeah, in the 5 years, we've really been trying. We've worked hard. We have a team of experts that work hard. We have a team of experts externally that also assist us with the projects. For instance, when people put in their proposals, we have 3 experts from the industry that are in our books that we send our proposals to, who give recommendations as to whether we should fund the project or we shouldn't, and giving reasons thereof, or if we're funding reasons why, if we're not funding reasons why. And so when people eventually either get an award letter or they get a letter rejecting the proposal, they have like a long list. We have we give detailed feedback. And one of the reasons we do that is, again, because we are a regional funder and we are still growing, and we're really trying to grow the industry, especially in KZN. So we want people to also see where they can improve. So it's not just like, oh, sorry, we're not funding you, and then we leave you there. So we say, sorry,
Ziyanda, not to, yes, and I appreciate, you're obviously an industry expert, very well versed in the issues, primarily when it comes to regional or the KwaZulu-Natal Film Commission, the challenges, the lessons there as well. There seems to be a thread when it comes to especially startups, filmmakers feeling despondent, saying, the passion is being stifled because of the rigidity of the requirements for funding. So if you would just touch on that very briefly, and I do hate to interrupt you, but we are strict on time. So just in responding to that, the low-hanging fruit, as it were, or ways that you can make this process less cumbersome as a filmmaker. Thank you.
Okay, so what we normally say to filmmakers, we normally say to filmmakers, if you have a great concept and you don't have experience, partner with an experienced filmmaker. So I think sometimes people fail to see
Ziyanda, we've just lost you there. Your network is breaking up, so we're not able to hear you, and I do apologize for that. Sorry, if you can just pick up the train of thought. You were still saying that, young filmmakers ought to partner with more experienced or established film production units, as it were.
Yeah, yes. So anyway, so I was saying, what we normally advise and recommend to filmmakers is that even if you are an emerging filmmaker, you don't have a lot of experience, there's people out there who have the experience. So partner with them, and in that, you're also going to gain skills. You're gaining experience, you're learning from them. So we're very big on learning, and people also learning from experienced filmmakers. And so that's what we normally say. And also, like I said, in terms of development, we are at least a little bit easy there. We're not as strict. So if you have a good concept that we see potential in, we'll support you, we'll guide you. We get you, to partner with a script editor who's going to guide you on scripting, because, we all know in the industry that you can't, it's very important to make sure that your script is good, because if your script is not good, then basically, it's not going to be a success. You can't fix it in post, unfortunately.
No, thank you very much. Siyabonga kakhulu Ziyanda Macengwane, who is with the KZN Film Commission. Really, really appreciate your time. If you would just hang on a little bit as we interact with the members of the public and filmmakers. We are responding to questions in real time as we have those. So thank you again for engaging us and for your presentation as well. We're going to move on now to the next segment, which is the film distributors and sales agents. This is once you've done, the product is ready to go to market and the various film festivals, and you've got partnerships with the broadcasting networks. We have in our midst from the AAA Entertainment, who's the head of distribution and financing, that is Mayenzeke Baza. Mayenzeke, let it be done. Mayenzeke, if you can join us, unmute your video and your mic as well. Thank you again. Welcome. Hi, Mayenzeke. Hi, just please unmute your microphone and we can see your presentation. And your time starts now. You've got 10 minutes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, ma'am, for the time, and thank you to the NEF for this great initiative. So, as you mentioned, my name is Mayenzeke Baza. I run a company called AAA Entertainment, which is a sales and distribution company. So we've been, I'm just going to run through the presentation and then we can talk through that. We've been in the business since 2014. What we do is sales and distribution. We also executive produce and finance film and television projects. We also do our own production and development of content. And the reason for that, I think we realized that South African filmmakers or content creators tend to not create things that are geared towards the market. So we work like a mini studio where we develop our own stuff and also can send it to the global market. At the same time, we do post-production for most of our content, as well as content that goes to different global platforms. As I said, in the sales and distribution, we've been in the market, we go to different markets, as mentioned there, NATPE, MIP-TV, Hong Kong, Ken, MIPCOM. I guess with COVID-19, as you all know, so the markets were most of them went virtual. So we participate in all the virtual markets all over the world. Some of the films we've represented in the past, you might have noticed them and see some of the big box office hitters, like Happiness or Kind of Samis. Some of these titles, we've sold them to Netflix globally. Some of the films we buy, at the same time, we do buy content from the international market and bring it to the local partners, such as MultiChoice, SABC, ETV, or anyone, or Netflix in Africa, or any other partner that is buying content, whether it be Starset. What I mean by executive producing is that when we do come into projects where we can assist content creators by either locally and internationally to access what's called DTI rebate or tax credit that exists. We do a bit of equity financing. We do work with partners like the bank, which is the IDC or NEF. Oftentimes we get asked by content creators to provide them with letters of interest to all these various funding bodies. As Yanda said, KZN Film Commission, NAVF, even as I think Paul mentioned with the IDC as well as the NEF. We are very much present. I think almost every project that gets funded in this country will have asked us for distribution or will have asked us for a letter of interest. We work a lot as well with some private equity or private investors where we can get some gap for some projects. We do bring in pre-sales or minimum guarantees to projects. depending where the pre-sale comes from. It could come from a local broadcaster, it could come from an international broadcaster. So when we bring in some of these financing, so we act as executive producers so that we can guarantee whoever gave us that pre-sale or that equity financing, that the project they're investing in, they'll be able to get it finished or also delivered to them. And oftentimes we find situations where you give money to someone, they go make it, and the project never gets finished. So when someone gives us the money to invest into projects, we have to have some form of responsibility. Hence, we come in as producers as well. I mean, some of the projects we've been involved with personally, locally, dance forms. There's a lot of projects that we currently are financing. Some television projects that we've worked on in the past, as well as those that we are working on, in the future. Our post-production services, we do quite a lot of that as well for many platforms, locally and globally, and even our own projects. That's the team. The three of us combined as the executive. We have over 30 years experience in the industry. I head up distribution and financing. Ms. Mawande does all our legal as well as our intellectual property. Pascal is the production guy. So those are offices. Of course, we do have an office in Lagos, as well as we've had to close, for now, our China office due to COVID-19, as everyone knows. But our base is mostly Johannesburg. So yeah, that's basically us, as a company. And I think, the key thing again to mention is, almost, I think, as I said, we get involved in a lot of projects locally. The question is always about, I think everyone is always going to come to me and say, Mainzeke, can we have a letter of interest or distribution letter because we want to go and finance it against NEF or against IDC or KZN? It's always a tricky part for distribution because you don't just issue a letter of interest, to be honest, unless you want to get involved in the project and you think there's a possibility for global sales. And I think it's a norm for local producers to do that and to take distribution as an isolation, where people think I can create and produce, but then I'll come to distribution at the end. Which I think one of the questions John Pella mentions that the issue they have with the local financing sector is that return on investment is difficult to quantify because which comes to success. So the success rate of what they've invested is not necessarily that tangible. I don't know, I mean, everyone else can explain from a monetary point of view, not necessarily from job creation or being able to fund someone, but just to be able to recoup your investment. That has happened very little, especially in South Africa, due to the fact that when people create their project, no one necessarily create the project with an eye to think where it's going to go to. Even in the local market, as much as the global market, everyone has an idea that we wanted to travel globally, and no one ever comes to us. To be honest, there's probably few of us who do what we do. They are the local distributors. I think Helen Kuhn is going to speak maybe after me, the guys who service Africa as a market. And then there's probably myself, and I don't know who other people who service the global market. And those are very small. But everyone else who create the content, they want to get to the global market. Now, the question is, at what stage do you engage us as sales companies? At what stage do we get involved into your project? So those are the things I think you have to think about, which are very key. As well as I think for the funding bodies, there's always this isolation from distributors, where I think Joel Mpela mentioned again was that for market access as well as return on investment, they try to engage distributors. I mean, that's a big thing, is which distributors do you engage and to what degree? Is it local? Is it international? So I think there needs to be a bigger conversation amongst us as distributors as well as the production community that continue to happen. And as well, I think with the change of things in the global market, as you know, the viability of cinema is becoming less and less. If especially with COVID, I don't know what's going to happen in the next few months, the next few years, but other distribution platforms, whether straight to networks or global market, those are becoming a reality. So I think more and more conversations is needed with production entities as well as distribution entities, just to make sure that we are able to create a viable local industry and to be able to sustain small businesses. I mean, our business, we mostly been representing Black stories, which we think need to travel to a global market. So more and more, those stories are of great needs now. Yeah, and I think that conversation is much more needed. So I'll leave it there for now. If anyone has any question, please feel free to to bounce it through me, or get in touch with me.
All right, thank you so much for that presentation. And we are, Mayenzege, thank you indeed, because I think this is the stage where filmmakers obviously would get the return on their investment, all the hard work that has been put in and the various partners, it now goes to market, and you have to put together a world-class production. But we know that South Africa is equal to the task when it comes to the talent and the expertise, and the thriving industry has got so much more potential to absorb new entrants. So thank you very much for that presentation. And it would be a disservice of me not to also highlight some of the work that the National Empowerment Fund has done in the film and television production space. We have the Zulu Wedding. Earlier on, we had Knuckle City, and we are acutely aware that the audio wasn't, or you couldn't hear it. So we'll play that a little bit later. But before we get into our next segment, which is on the insurance providers and film completion guarantors, we'll just want to play this video clip for you of a Zulu Wedding, which had a renowned success around the world, a multiple award-winning production as well. So take a look at this. I do beg your pardon, folks. We'll have to get back to that one in a little bit. We're also expecting from Holland Film Bonders, Paul Riley, Director of Holland Film Guarantors, but that presentation will be done by our investment associate for Umnoto Fund, Andres Lamini, affectionately known as AD in our quarters, because of the extensive work that the NEF has done with the various key stakeholders. So Andres, if you are available, AD, talk us through what it is that the film guarantors and the insurance sector, or providers rather, in the film space do. Hey, AD. All right, we're gonna have to move on to our, are you there? Oh, there you go. There is a bit of a delay, so you know what the—
Thank you very much for the introduction.
All right, go ahead. AD, I don't know what's wrong with the network there. Can you hear me? Yeah, there's a bit of an echo, so please just mute. I'm not sure if there's anybody else that is on. Just mute the ambience or anything else that's interfering with your presentation. Let me know if the sound and picture quality is good on your side. Hi, AD.
Cindy, is it better now? Can you hear me?
Much better. Okay, you have 5 minutes. AD, kwalapi?
Hi, Cindy. Is it better now? Am I audible now?
Yeah, we just unmute your video, please. Are you good?
I'm good, you?
Okay, carry on.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Cindy, for the introduction. I'll just cover on the importance of just your completion bonders in the film and television space. I think it's a section that is in any case supposed to cover the funders, because when you try and invest your money in some of these spaces, part of what you're afraid of is that you might just throw 10 million into a production that never really comes to be. So the role of your Holland Film Guarantees and Maru Film Services, are quite important in that they come into the space and then guarantee to the likes of your NEF, your DTIC, your IDCs, and also the Case and Film Commission, that the production you're investing in will ultimately, see completion and be on the shelf and can also be enjoyed, by your cinema patrons and the likes. And you also probably see the returns that are estimated there. Obviously, their role is not to guarantee that the revenue estimates that would have been made will be achieved, but they're guaranteeing that we'll come to a point where we'll see the film being completed. I would imagine the NEF and all of the other funders wouldn't be happy where you've invested, let's say, about 10 million into a production and it just never comes to be completed. You're actually sitting with work in progress that you can't sell anywhere and you can't actually recoup anything. So this particular section is actually for the film guarantors. In this case, those that would have attended similar seminars would know that it's usually the voice of Paul that covers this. And Paul in the past would have been working alongside Murova, who is now branched off and she's now with Maru Film Services. So I'll just try and do them justice in this regard. But for me, the most important thing is just highlighting the importance of the bonders in this case. And it's one of the requirements that my colleague Joel would have indicated, that when you do make a submission for funding in the film space, we're quite strict in that you must come in with a bonding agreement or even a letter of intent indicating that the likes of Holland and Maru Film Services have agreed to provide you with a bond. So I'll touch on their processes in terms of you getting a bond from them and some of the important documents that you'll need to submit to Holland. But in any case, you'll find that most of these documents that you need to submit to the likes of Holland and Maru Film Services would be similar in any case to what you would submit to your IDCs, the KZN Film Commission, and even the NEF. So what I have noted from Paul is that they do have an online app that simplifies the application process from their side. So all you need to do is just access that app and upload some of these documents that are indicated there, ranging from your script, your budget, your finance plan, and the important schedules, including your shooting schedule, your post schedule, production schedule, and the cash flow documents. There's a list of documents that we've indicated there, but I just wanted to skim through the most important ones. Your finance agreements that are fully executed, as indicated there, because the importance of the completion guarantors, in my opinion, in my experience, in essence, to protect the guys that have actually put their money in the production of this film. And therefore, you literally have no one to protect where you don't have, a fully funded project with fully executed funding agreements. So these are the list of documents that are required from their side in order for them to provide you with a bond. This information is also available on their website, so I just wanted to cover it briefly. Part of what they do, obviously, before they assume the risk, and everyone in the insurance space would understand that, granting Andres and his firm, a bond, is taking a risk that Andres will actually see this film to completion. And then as any insurance company, you then want to undertake risk assessment procedures to ensure that the risk that you're exposing yourself to, is adequate and it's in line with your risk appetite as an organization. So they'll look into your budget in detail and ensure that, the budget itself, given the film that you want to produce, the budget can actually achieve that. You don't want to produce, let's say, the Matrix film with a budget of 2 million. It might be that it's just not doable. They also look into account, they take into account, your crew and then your cast, because we do have very experienced individuals in the film and television industry that do not come cheap. So you probably won't find, your high earning individuals in that space, like your high net producers in that space, maybe playing or participating in the production of a low budget film. So that also has to be taken into account in the budgeting and assessing the adequacy of that particular budget. So part of the things that they look into are your effects and, whether your film will have stunts, your visual effects, the animals that probably need to have on your production. I can make an example out of, I think, the last two Mr. Bones films. You do have some animals in that film, and you also have other films where you have special effects that need to be taken into account, like VFX and so on. So those need to be budgeted for in the production budget. And Hollard will probably also assess the adequacy of that budget to see if the aspects that you want to include in your production can actually be catered for in that particular budget. And the importance also of the budgeting is that, for a funder like the NEF, we really don't have a dedicated resource that will be looking at a budget and assessing if the budget is adequate for what you're trying to achieve. And it's important for us where you come to us and you've already interacted with the likes of your Hollard, and they've already, in principle, given you thumbs up, for the budgets that you are proposing, because then we can, to a certain extent, as people that work in the same industry, also rely on the expertise of your Hollard and Maru Film Services, to rely on the fact that the budget you've proposed, can lead to a completed film. The film can be achieved in that particular budget. And yeah, these are some of the considerations that they'll put on the table before they actually provide you with with the bond. So they also look into the chain of title to see if you really own the rights to that particular film. And it's part of the CPs to the NEF funding, in that I think it becomes risky where you're trying to produce or trying to exploit a particular story, but you don't own the rights to it, because we might also find ourselves under lawsuit for having financed such a venture. So the chain of title is very important. They also assist also with your DTI rebates. I know they have an accounting system online that they use to track the progress of the film, and they can also assist with documentation that will have you claim your DTI milestone-based rebates. So part of the support that they have on their website is that they can provide you with accounting templates, they can provide you with your production templates, they can assist in the budgeting process, and they assist you with tracking, your expenditure as you produce on a day-to-day basis. And I think what we've also appreciated as a funder from their side is that it makes it easier for us to track, where we are with the production and how the expenditure is trickling. I do know that, in production, you are supposed to have a line producer that will then look into, the expenditure and maybe track where you are going over budget. But, having an independent party like a Hollard that we can interact with at will and maybe get, adequate information in terms of how the production is, progressing, and whether you are spending in line with what was proposed, is quite advantageous for us. So yeah, these are some of the support systems that they have on their side. And part of what they do then on a daily basis is that they'll monitor the daily call sheets, they'll look at the rep reports and the daily production reports, in trying to monitor the progress of the film as you proceed. So yeah, I think that should be it from our side, or from the Hollard side in this case. But I trust this would have been informative. But yeah, I can take questions in this regard, also on the panel and also in the chat room.
Andres, thank you so much. It's really impressive how much you know about one of the key stakeholders, which is Hollard film financing, and the workings of how, as a filmmaker, you need to cover all the blind spots for in case there is weather interference and production can't take place and the crew has to be paid, or there might be some other liability that you are not aware of. So very, very grateful. Thank you so much for that presentation. We go into our next segment now, which is the industry creative groups, the independent producers organizations, or the IPO. And we have Michael Oret, a film producer with Spear Films. Thank you for your patience, Michael. We are aware that you have another engagement later on, but thank you again for participating. You have 10 minutes. And as soon as you're ready to go, please go ahead.
Okay, good morning. Thanks to the NEF for this opportunity. I want to introduce Nabuntu Dovizana, who's going to be presenting with me, and Sanjeev Singh, who's also going to be presenting. I'm just going to try and share my screen. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, I can.
Okay. So I think what we wanted to do was just introduce our organization to people who don't know it, but also it's transformed quite radically very recently. So we also want to talk about that. We're essentially a representative body that represents producers, 70% of the working producers in South Africa. And we're striving to create a empowered, transformed and representative film and television industry across the board. And we've done that first at home with electing an EXCO this year for the first time, which has a majority Black producer membership.
Hi, Michael. I do hate to interrupt your flow. Please, won't you just move closer to your microphone? We're battling to hear you. If I asked of the other speakers as well, if you just boost your audio and then you can continue. Thank you.
Okay. So as I was saying, we're striving to ensure that our industry is transformed, and we've done that by the membership of our EXCO, which is majority Black and 50% women this year for the first time. And we are striving to help producers across the value chain. So the traditional film and television suppliers, but also we are in discussions with animation producers, documentary producers to make a broader family. And our organization is there really to try and maximize the potential of the industry in terms of the economy and social aims of government. And we do that by really impacting on policy development, the audiovisual white paper that's currently out. There's the RG reference, there's a reference group with the Department of Sports and Arts and Culture, the NEF Council creation and its policies. There's a small business development working group. There's probably about 10 or 11 different policy interventions which we are engaged with and we're doing all the time. We're continually trying to change conditions to improve the life of producers in the audiovisual sector and to improve the impact that we have on the industry. Ubuntu, do you want to speak to this
Yes,
one?
sure. And you might have to project when you take over again. People are like, can Mr. Michael please speak up? Well, no one's ever asked you to project and boost your voice, Mike. As Mike said, I'm actually one of the new members at the IPO Expo. And really to understand which industry the IPO speaks to, so that you don't think we're a broad organization. We are mainly for film, television, and video production. And as Mike mentioned, we are now branching out to the very real world of digital content creation too, by engaging with sectors that we think would be really a well-fit merger. It really excites us too to have heard from NEF and IDC that they are aligned with a lot of the ethos that we hold within the organization ourselves. Somebody's mic is on and they're moving in a car or doing something, please just check that you're muted if you're not speaking with us, unless that's you, Sanjeev, and you're moving around the office. Sorry, so as I was saying, you can see that one of our key points is that we're very interested as an organization to contribute to South Africa's National Development Plan of 2030. And that comes from an internal perspective of having 65% of the industry workforce being 35 or younger. And obviously with the NDP 2030 looking to employ young people, a lot of the services that we participate in, lobbying for better treatment, better pay, doing research and using the white paper that the NEF and basically DCDT has been looking at within the digital technologies to better our industry, is something as an organization that we're hugely passionate about. And we fully recognize that producers are no longer this traditional executive producers just sitting in Hollywood. Producers are content creators online now. And it's really exciting when we hear that NEF and IDC and all these other entities are fully cognizant of creating a wide spectrum of what this industry is. And IPO is really, we believe, one of the thought leaders in ensuring that South Africa can bring in global systems that assist producers and content creators to not only contribute to jobs, but increase the GDP through the creative industries, which I think is still not really fully exploited. And IPO is very passionate about that. And I think we can move on to the next slide, unless I've missed something, Mike. And I'll hand it back to you. You're on mute, Mike.
Sorry, I'm sure everybody knows this, but I'll just run through who we are in terms of the value chain. Authors, playwrights, screenwriters come up with our IP. Producers, lawyers, accountants, insurers, completion guarantors do the financing. And then production involves a lot of different small businesses and individuals. But we also have obviously distribution, sales, and marketing. And then all of this, the smaller businesses which feed into us, which may be car hire, transport, hotels, accommodation, florists, etc., etc. 67% of production spend actually flows into other sectors, and you'll see that in this slide, which is from a UK consultancy of an average film and television production. But you can see how much of an economic driver investment in film and television is in terms of the different sectors of the economy that benefit from investment flowing through a film or a television production. And as Nabuntu has pointed out, these, in terms of recovery from COVID, investment in this area will really help us to boost the whole economy and to reach these National Development Program goals of 2030 in terms of job creation across the board, and particularly in smaller businesses and lower skilled workers.
Absolutely.
I'm just going to rush over this. These are obviously all the government agencies that the IPO is intersecting with: DSAC, small business, DTIC, DCDT in terms of digital, NFEF, the provincial film commissions, city offices, municipalities, IDC, etc., etc. So all of these bodies are bodies that the SASFED, which is the Screen Federation, and the Independent Producer Organization that is part of SASFED interact with on a weekly and a monthly basis to try and shape policy and legislation. In terms of current trends in the industry, in terms of production, there has been, prior to COVID, there was this incredible demand, and during COVID as well, of streaming services and new broadcasters coming on stream. So a lot of appetite for content. And as a result of that appetite, there are many studios being built worldwide. There are more studios being built in the UK, in Australia, all over the world. And so there's actually a real market for studios to be built in South Africa as well. They're increasing co-production opportunities. And because of the bottled up demand during COVID, this is going to come back strong. As soon as COVID is over, there's going to be this rush to fill schedules that were emptied by lack of production. So we've also got to come back strong. And in that regard, you know, we're one of the few African countries ourselves and Mauritius that have an incentive. And I think in terms of BRICS countries, possibly only Brazil has an incentive. So, but we have a lot of smaller economies like Greece, Spain, Croatia, Bulgaria, Mauritius, who are all competing for that global foreign direct investment that comes from productions that are done in each country. So we need to continually try and be competitive with our competitors in terms of the incentive program that we have. The impact of COVID is that obviously a lot of production was shut down. A lot of our workers are freelance, and so no work, no pay. They've often had to kind of go on to other things. International service work has stopped. In terms of Department of Trade and Industry rebates, the application process stopped for a while. Cash flow also affected people's companies and businesses. Only one broadcaster provided any relief for producers, productions, for crew. But the IPO is working with the South African Film Academy to try and save our previously disadvantaged crew through monies that are available, where we're going to engage in making short films with previously disadvantaged crew that will help them not only to be paid during this time, but also add to their credits on IMDb and on their CVs. So despite being able to return to work, it's costing us a lot of money to go back into work. But broadcasters have often asked us to put in all of the cost that is costing us. So we are struggling right now. We're also struggling because we don't have insurance, pandemic insurance, and we have very little support from Treasury in terms of funds that are really going to be able to carry us through. So I don't know.
Do you want me to speak, Mike?
To jump in, and then Sanjeev maybe.
Sure. I haven't seen Sanjeev. Sanjeev, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I think I'll hand over to you, Sanjeev, when we go to the SWOT analysis, because you had quite a strong, I think, assessment of that. So I'll go through the major events that have impacted our sector. And before I do, I know we've got short time, but there's some key questions that have been brought up in the chat, which I think the IPO can really help with. Many of the participants might not know, but IPO, even if you're not part of the EXCO, is there to represent people who may not even be producers. We represent across the spectrum of the industry. So whether it's for television or film, as you saw at the beginning, just join the organization and you'll stay really up to date with a lot of the things that we're going through quite rapidly here. I see Putty was asking about the copyright bill and the amendment bill. It's still an ongoing matter. There's a webinar with Wits Recreate that IPO is participating in. So really, we are an organization that everyone who is currently here, it's hugely affordable. You know, the fees range from 350 Rand to something bigger if you're an established entity. So please just come to our website after this. With NEF and IDC, all of us here as panelists are here for you in the industry to be well informed and empowered. But basically, just an overview of this current slide is evidently, you know, as government shifts, and we know that money was taken into recovery because of COVID as a pandemic and how it impacted industries, it really affected the way that the industry could function. There've been delayed payments from DTIC, and that's really obviously affected how people have been able to finish production. Some people have had to stop, and there's no safety net. As Mike mentioned in the previous slide, you know, Treasury's not created a safety net specifically for creative industries, and entities have had their budgets cut. So there's really uncertainty about the rebate scheme as well, which is such an empowering scheme because it allows for filmmakers and television producers to create content, have some ownership of that. And as NEF and IDC mentioned previously, and even Mayenzega in selling property overseas, having some sort of ownership and IP on your content gives us as young creatives, especially previously disadvantaged ones like myself, power to sell to international markets. So there's a lot of risk, and we're not as an organization blaming government, but we're just pointing out that as IPO, we're constantly lobbying and we're constantly working to highlight the challenges that face the creative industry. Do you want to go to the next slide? Again, yes, with the CASA is also one of the impacts. It's one of the entities that are reducing the performance period, which you know, affects local content the most because ICASA obviously speaks to our main broadcaster. So it's quite challenging, I think, for everyone. And with content not being able to move internationally either, this affects the capacity for South Africa to be a location that attracts international markets to come and film here, as mentioned by Mike before. I think we can move on again, Mike, and rapidly get through this. This is really a slide. I'm not going to speak to each point, but I think pay attention to it because this gives you some hope in knowing that, especially for us as the IPO, we'd like the NEF to note that this was actually a major GDP driver, this industry, the creative industry of film and television. And even though we don't have a very wide data spectrum in our country, you know, a lot of people don't have access to free Wi-Fi. Digital content is also on the rise in our country. So, you know, the fact that we were creating plus minus 60,000 full-time jobs in the creative industry is something that post-COVID can be doubled, at least tripled, with the right investment, with the right funding designs that you've seen in IDC, that NEF is trying to expand on, and IPO is keen to help you with. And we were poised for massive growth, as you can see there on the 5th point, and we still are. So there's no need for us to lose hope as an industry, as a consumer. And if you are a struggling producer, you know, we were in a prime position to grow and continue growing. And if all of us as entities come together to really look at the soft value of telling our stories, which is at the bottom there, Brand South Africa can just continue to rise. And if every single grant or every single element of our industry is driven in the right direction, you can see the growth here. In this graph, that not only do we add value to the GDP, we add value to the social cohesion goal of the NDP 2030, which is very important. And we just keep people employed and telling our stories. I think we can move on. Maybe Sanjeev, you want to speak to the gaps, or Mike?
Yeah, Sanjeev?
Okay, yeah. So we have, after COVID, with cinemas reopening in August, unfortunately, 80% of the attendances are down in cinemas, and it is bleak at the moment with cinemas struggling to stay open. We'll probably find that many cinemas will close until the December holidays, and will probably only reopen once there's more product available for a wide appeal audience. Although we have a few cinemas in townships, it's unlikely that we're going to get drive-in cinemas opening up anytime soon, showing new product because of the requirement by studios needing DCP screening facilities. And the cost to set up a DCP screening facility with a server is astronomical, more than R1 million per screen, which may not be sustainable for drive-in cinemas showing new product. During COVID, a few cinemas tried out, a few drive-in operators tried screening older product, which had reasonable attendances for people who were just wanting to get out of the house, but it is not sustainable for library content. With regard to provincial production incentives, need to have more support from government for non-comedy projects, that they need to be able to subsidize attendances at cinemas for socially responsible films, and also stories that need to be told. Audiences in South Africa predominantly like comedy, and most of the comedies have performed well in South Africa pre-COVID. However, non-comedies have struggled to find audiences in South Africa, but they have been able to sell internationally. Film studios in Cape Town have been very successful. We have earmarked property in Durban to build a film studio, but it's been delayed, and hopefully it'll start sometime soon. With regard to local productions, we haven't had any local productions of feature films, although TV content, predominantly soapies, have been continued to be produced after the lockdown 4, but very other TV productions were able to commence. With these strengths that we have, as listed, we've got highly skilled producers, cast and crew, and excellent opportunities for international productions to come out and shoot in South Africa using the facilities and the crew and cast and crew that we have here. And with the exchange rate that we have, it's very favorable shooting in South Africa, where you get a lot more a bang for your buck, and also the long shooting days that we have here. Mike, you can go to the next slide. As mentioned earlier, with the government needing to understand the importance of our sector and to be able to support films that are relevant stories, stories that need to be told and to be viewed by local audiences, and not only just comedy. You can go ahead, Mike. As listed, the local consumption pre-COVID was very good. However, the few local films that have been released since the 28th of August have struggled to find audiences in South Africa. And even the Hollywood productions are also struggling to find audiences. The people are still wary of going to a cinema at the moment, and hopefully once we have a vaccine that will be able to improve the box office attendances at cinemas, and Although rural cinemas are required in rural areas, with the lack of disposable income in these communities and the high cost of fitting out a cinema for new product is prohibitive. So it may not be able to generate rural cinemas, but to show new product, but there could be opportunities once a film is released on DVD to make cinemas available in these rural communities.
Nabuntu, do you want to?
Sorry, go ahead. Nabuntu, over to you.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Thank you. Did not realize that. Thank you. I'm going to go through quickly because I think our 10 minutes is almost over and Mike has to leave us soon. But again, this presentation will be shared and everyone who's here will have access to our research and our data. But there is a lot of opportunity here. There's an increasing global appetite for South African and African content and African stories. So we're not saying all of this data to give gloom and doom. You know, there is hope. We just need to create structures and systems with government and with creators that actually allow for rural audience to get access to content and to create African stories that are created by African content producers. Next slide, please. And sorry, one of the key opportunities that I missed there, which I think Mayenzega from AAA spoke to quite clearly, co-production with international people is so important for us to get that foreign investment. And it's one of our last points. And if we're trying to lift cinema going and content creation in underdeveloped areas like township and rural environments, when we get foreign investment, it really opens the gateway to that, and not just for consumption, but for creation. There are definitely threats that we've spoken to, COVID being a key one, in us not having insurance as producers. It's very dangerous. It doesn't allow for people to be able to move and have access to creation. The rebates, uncertainty really decreases our capacity to have ownership of our content, which moves us back at least 10 years as an industry. The financial crises for the local TV industry, specifically with the broadcaster, there's a lot to worry about, and these are very real threats, but don't lose hope. Next slide. What we really need in the industry, and the IPO is really aware of and would like to engage further with the NEF and IDC with, because this again speaks to job creation, is script editors / doctors who can bring in the indigenous languages in South Africa that are not being exploited, experienced writers, especially those who speak indigenous African languages, line producers and production accountants who are of African ethnicity and identify as female. They are so scarce. They are needed. If you're one of them on this panel, come to us. And there's just not enough high-end production designers, armors, and people within the design spectrum of that world. The incentives that are being offered are the rebate that we've spoken to, the grants from NFEF and KZN who have spoken here today, and the Income Tax Act is also quite an incentive that is still on offer. So again, don't lose hope. And what are the leading economic indicators for us? FDI, the number of jobs that are being created. I'm not going to read all of them, but the key thing that we care about at IPO is not only just speaking to government through achieving NDP 2030 goals, but being attractive to an international market too, because foreign investment has shown statistically to improve the capacity for a creative industry. Mike was just telling me how the UK has not gone into recession for 2 years in a row because of their creative industries. And that just shows you the power we have as an industry in affecting a country's economic status. I'll hand it over to you, Mike, to close for us, because I know you have to dash off.
Okay. Yeah, so essentially, obviously other economic indicators would be ticket sales and box office, the amount of local film and television content that we are selling and we are playing on international broadcasters. Another highlight for us was recently completed a 10-episode series, $30 million financed by the IDC, and it's had South African writers, South African directors, and 50% owned by South Africa, and will be playing worldwide. So that's the kind of content that we can be creating as Black South Africans, as white South Africans all together. That's the hope we have. The assistance that we need from government is really a cross-sectoral support and management, so that all of the DTIC, DSAC, NFEF, etc., are speaking to each other and supporting each other in support of the audiovisual industry. another slide here which just shows how much money is spent during one film or television production. In terms of the Western Cape, those are the figures for the amount of the 2.38 billion was spent in media production. That's the associated article where you can find that information about how much has been spent to the Western Cape. We are desperately needing insurance indemnity fund, which we've spoken to DSAC and to NFEF about. Independent production can't operate without it. NEF will need it for its productions. These are a bunch of publications that you can have reference to from this slide, which give you an idea of partnership between countries and production sector. We need funds to supplement budgets for health and safety now that COVID is here. We need help with copyright, fairness in that regime. The incentive scheme needs to work efficiently and effectively and not scare people off or create issues for production companies. And for NFEF and other grant funding bodies, we obviously want the maximum amounts to go to grant funding as opposed to other activities. In regards to National Empowerment Fund, your fund is amazing, and we want to help you partner that fund with other funds to help producers make more content. So SARS, we need to revisit incentives. There are provincial places like Western Cape which need to start funding film, like KZN. With DCDT, we want to grow the number of creative producers in the digital sector, so we as an industry have enormous potential laid out here. If we're given the right kind of support across the board, which is already happening with the DTI rebate, with the NFEF having been set up, these are great programs which no other African country has. So we have an immense amount to be proud of. What we need to do is to coordinate and make sure they're all working effectively. And obviously a big shout out to the IDC and to the National Empowerment Fund for the great work that they're doing as well. These are the kind of trade magazines and the different things that we are referencing. This is just a small amount of the different publications. And then other research that we've been looking through, which is available from our website and from us if you want to look at it. And that's it. Thanks a lot for giving us the opportunity.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Really, really appreciate it. And Michael, thank you so much for the endorsement of the DFIs and the National Empowerment Fund, Nobuntu, highlighting that this is a thriving industry that is a multiplier of employment. You said that we as a collective can then enhance or fly the brand South Africa flag high. So we really appreciate your presentation. Cheryl Tucker, I just want to close with her remarks saying, thanks IPO for the presentation. As a member, it is reassuring and motivating to know there is lobbying being done on the industry's behalf and information available when questions arise. Good to see what is being done. Again, folks, the presentations will be uploaded on the NEF website. That's nefcorp.co.za, and the video will also be available on demand. Thank you again for your patience. Now, in our next segment, we have from the South African Guild of Actors, and is it Carolyn de Waal-Smit, the National Secretary and Treasurer? Are you ready? Good afternoon and welcome. Your 10 minutes starts now.
Thank you so much to the NEF for creating this opportunity for SAGO to speak. So just the background is that SAGO is 11 years old this year. We are a duly constituted NPO, mandated and working solely on behalf of professional actors, with a provision for full membership, associate and student membership. We are here to empower performers to find their voice and to make sure that they have somewhere to go to in order to understand their industry better. Our executive committee is made up of 9 members who are all volunteers. They're all professional actors, so it's an organization of actors working on behalf of actors. SAGA is a powerful unified voice that aims to right the current wrongs and influence the future legislation to create fair and equitable working conditions for actors in our industry. We are apolitical, non-racial and democratic, and we represent actors' interests. SAGA gives various benefits, including a legal voice to the voiceless actors in our industry. So SAGA is affiliated with a number of organizations in various ways. In 2012, we were included into the body of the Federation for International Actors, called FIA, which is over 60 countries with acting unions worldwide fall under this umbrella. And SAGA has basically been taken under the wing of both SAG-AFTRA, which is the American union, as well as ACTRA, which is the Canadian Union for Actors, to be able to assist how SAGA can develop within the South African context for the benefit of actors, as well as us having some kind of say and information sharing from the internationals, where it kind of upskills and assists not only the organization as SAGA, but also its members. Both ACTRA and SAG-AFTRA have come to South Africa on at least 5 occasions to run workshops and information sharing sessions so that we can offer a world-class industry moving forward. During COVID, obviously there has been a huge impact, and worldwide the discussions around live performance and the impact of what that has done has been so telling that South Africa is not on their own. We are here in exactly the same position as many of our international counterparts, where live performance and even audiovisual sectors have been halted to a really devastating result. There are many countries around the world still who don't have their audiovisual, television or film industries back up and running as yet. So I think South Africa has really put a great step forward when we work together as an industry in putting various COVID protocols together to allow our industry to get back into the swing of things during COVID. So one of the other things that the Federation for International Actors has assisted SAGA with is making submissions to the Copyright Amendment Bill and the Performance Protection Amendment Bills, because within South Africa, we have never had legislation for actors for any kind of performance protection in terms of royalties and the ownership of actors owning the right to their image. So FIA was instrumental in being able to assist in what the international standards are and what legislation we need within this country in order for us to stand on an international stage. So one of the other affiliations that SAGA has is with SASFED, which the IPO mentioned also, and SASFED sits both with and the contracting parties around the same table, wanting to bring, you know,
Hi, Carolyn. Hi. We think there's your connectivity has just been interrupted. So we do apologize. If you do have your presentation, we can upload that onto our website. And I do apologize for that. But we also have our investees. Are you back? All right. Yes. Are you able to pick up? We just can't see your presentation. All right, continue.
So basically, we, being part of SASFED, SAGA has a number of memorandums of understandings with current industry organizations. We are affiliated with the Personal Managers Association, which is a body of agents in the acting industry, SAPAMA, which is also a body of agents in the acting industry, SWIFT, Sisters Working in Film and Television, specifically working on curbing sexual harassment We have been instrumental in assisting with creating codes of conduct, contractual addendums, and guides to reporting. SAGA is also in a memorandum of understanding with actors spaces, as well as SACIA. SACIA is assisting SAGA to create a professional designation through SACWA for actors to be recognized as professionals within the skills arena. SAGA is also busy working and formulating an MOU with the KZN Film Commission, who are assisting with curbing the exploitation of actors within the KZN market. Then SAGA has been very pleased to be part of a recipient of the grant funding from the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture for 2019 to 2020. And this is specifically for outreach, information sharing sessions, capacity building. It creates employment opportunities for both individuals, companies, and industry professionals. As part of the Film Summit, SAGA through SASFED is also representing the guilds within the independent production sector, including the Writers Guild, Editors Guild, etc. I think the biggest advantage and kudos for the grant with the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture is that because we haven't managed to have face-to-face workshop sessions around the country, with COVID, SAGA has created the first online portal where webinars that we have hosted and all discussions, workshops, and skills development for the industry from an actor's point of view and certain industry discussions has basically been created where registration is free for anybody. Some of the topics that have been discussed and bantered and added to are COVID protocols, information and panel discussion on sexual harassment. We've had the Copyright Amendment Bill and Performance Protection Amendment Bill discussions, then practical skills workshops with accents, mental health, various acting methods, panel discussions with many professional and experienced industry professionals. So one of the biggest things that SAGA is busy with is lobbying for actors. So the most important development for actors in the last number of years has been the Copyright Amendment Bill and the Performance Protection Amendment Bill. So the Performance Protection Amendment Bill is known as the Actors Bill, giving rights to audiovisual performers that they have never had in the history of this country, which is the right to own their own image and the right to earn from the exploitation of their work. SAGA has been part of the technical working group with the DTIC to assist with input on how the Performance Protection Amendment Bill would impact actors within the industry. So in 2019, the bills were passed through both houses of Parliament. After more than a year, the President has sent the bills back to Parliament on constitutional grounds. SAGA really hopes that this process is not prolonged and that the Performance Protection Act from 1967, before television was even in South Africa, is passed so that actors can have the protection that are afforded most other actors around the world. One of the things that the Performance Protection Amendment Bill will do is it will create some kind of sustainability for actors. And this is, the lack thereof has been highlighted more so now even during the COVID-19 pandemic because of the devastating impact that it has had on actors in the audiovisual and live performance sectors, which is what the IPO has already mentioned. So these bills will change the landscape for South African actors and forever giving them the rights when the legislation has been promulgated and then South Africa can ratify the WIPO Beijing Treaty from 2012. One of the other lobbying areas is the Department of Employment and Labour sent out a gazetted request for submissions in December 2019 to deem freelancers employees for certain provisions of the Labour Relations Act. And this basically can provide protection for actors that we don't have due to the nature of being contract workers rather than employees. SAGA has made submissions, and we are grateful to the department for their attention that they brought to the creative industries and the lack of some protections that would benefit actors due to the unequal power dynamic in the contracting landscape that we have currently between contracted and contracting parties, whether they be broadcasters, whether they be producers, directors. The negotiation for actors would then be on a more equal footing, which would then make a more fair and protected environment for actors. SAGA also offers its members various benefits, including access to medical emergency evacuation, roadside assistance, representation in contractual disputes up to magistrates court level, in any permanent employment situation. The legal representation extends to the CCMA and Labour Court. There is a funeral policy the moment that any actor joins as a full SAGA member. There is preferential access to financial products, travel deals, and study grants, and a discount on holiday accommodation in Margate. SAGA members also have discount on theatre tickets, and sometimes the most interesting and sought after is the discount of the IMDb Pro subscription, where SAGA gets a 25% discount for their members. So in closing, just to note that SAGA is here to continue to work for the benefit of professional actors within the industry, be it audiovisual or be it live performance. I'm happy to take any questions.
Carolyn, thank you so much. I think in the main, everybody is satisfied with the detailed presentation. And just a request, if you have a presentation that we can upload for later, people want to access it, we can upload it on our website, and also contact details. You did say that your objectives in the main is to protect the interests and the rights of actors and practitioners in this space. We know that there have been great strides made when it comes to the working conditions, remuneration, but still we need to measure the success rate versus what the underlying or fundamental questions that we still need to answer. But Carolyn, we're going to leave it there. Thank you very much. Just please share your presentation
with us. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Will do. Thank you.
You're most welcome. And now the final segment that we have is where the NEF can walk the talk and showcase the products and services at various levels of the application process that investees would have undergone. We have Maynard Krak, who's Managing Director of West 5 Films, who is an investee with the National Empowerment Fund and has produced Last Victims. We're just queuing that clip for you to enjoy. We have Mauricia Matlejwane, who is Managing Director of Dream Vision Pictures, and Menzi Tabete, Managing Director of Tabete Menzi Films. And each investee has got a unique experience with the National Empowerment Fund application process. Some have been concluded, dispersed, some are still in the pipeline as it was. So before we go to Maynard Krak, let's showcase a film which is called Last Victims, which was co-founded by the KwaZulu-Natal Film Commission and the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. Take a look at this.
Breath. The same night my son breathed his. In my time in C1, I killed 34 people. At first I
All
believed
right,
what I
let's
was
just
doing
give you a
was
sense of
the
what's
only way
going on
to save the
because
country.
the virtual platform that we're on is different from live television. So do bear with us as we're trying to cue the next segment. Maynard, you might even be able to share with us the experience you've had under COVID-19 lockdown. We're now on level 1, where there's a little bit of ease when it comes to production, but you still have to adhere to health protocol, how that has impacted. We're going to give it another shot and see if we can play Last Victims, and so we can do or edify you properly. We have the guys frantically trying to share that. So if you'll just indulge us, folks, this is The Last Victims, a production by West 5 Films. Let's try that again. Ag nee man, ons sal dit seker vir later moet los. Okay.
In my time in C1, I killed 34 people.
All right, let's just, Maynard, are you there? We did try to, to add the bells and the balloons and the whistles and give it that Hollywood feel, if you will. But you have 5 minutes just to share your experience or your application experience with the National Empowerment Fund. What are you working on currently? How did you manage under COVID-19 when production had been brought to a screeching halt, and where we are now with alert level 1? It's over to you, Meneer Karok.
Thank you, Cindy. So just if anybody wants to watch that trailer, I put it into the YouTube link for the trailer in the chat room there. So the film The Last Victims was co-funded by the National Empowerment Fund, the Department of Trade and Industry, and even though Ziyanda failed to mention it in her list of films, the KZN Film Commission, the film was set and shot in its entirety in the KZN North Coast, and we embarked on a very vigorous and in-depth skills transfer program alongside the film, which I fostered with the Durban University of Technology, DUT. So we had a number of either immediate graduates or those who were doing their hours in order to graduate, who were part of the production. And I'm very proud of all of those young people who played a part in helping us produce that film, and for all the people involved in KZN. That film to date is now just been selected into its 26th international festivals, going to the Sydney Liftoff. It's won 19 awards so far and a further 10 nominations. So the film's doing really well in the festival circuit. However, as it is with our exhibitors here, even though there's no content available, we're still struggling to get them to do a wide release in cinemas. Yeah, so that is something which is still ongoing discussion, and the film will be screening at the Labia Cinema in Cape Town in the next few weeks. So that is the one film which I have done with the National Empowerment Fund. And just to give you guys all just a little bit of an idea of I think anyone who's here who's produced a film knows there's many challenges in terms of financing a picture. Our financing pretty much collapsed days before we were supposed to roll. We were already 3 or 4 weeks into pre-production on location in KZN when the finance collapsed with one of the financiers pulled out, and I managed to bring the National Empowerment Fund, which is my first project with them, into the finance model. And I've enjoyed a very good relationship with the National Empowerment Fund, and with especially with the person I'll deal with mostly, which is Andres Domini. And I think in terms of what they're trying to achieve, I think the National Empowerment Fund are on a really good wicket. They've got their hearts in the right place, but also looking at the viability of a project. If they're not just going to jump in willy-nilly, they're looking at the overall the package as already been discussed by Joel and others here, and also with your bonding company attached. I work mostly with Paul, but also I see Maroba's is around. Maroba was working with us on this particular project. while she was still working with Paul. So the funding for this picture was, as I mentioned, the Department of Trade and Industry, the National Empowerment Fund. The processes are quite, especially with the first one and going through the DD, etc., is quite a lengthy process. But at the end of the day, they came through, they saved the project, and the film is doing very well on the festival circuit at the minute. To answer your other questions, Cindy, what we're busy working on right now, we have a project which is a co-production, an official treaty co-production with Canada called Shaidan, which is a creature feature horror action film, and that I'm doing with a company out of Winnipeg in Manitoba, Canada, which we're shooting in entirety in South Africa. All the post-production will go back to Canada. We were about to shoot this film. In fact, we had started shooting the film last year, and we had to put the film into hiatus as we were waiting for a part of the puzzle to be in place in terms of signatures, etc., which took a very long time. Then, unfortunately, COVID struck this year and put us all back by however long, which has been very, very challenging. And right now, we've now been faced with another challenge through one of the funders, which we are now working very hard, myself and Andres, in terms of finding a solution so that we do not jeopardize this project and jeopardize any relationships we may have internationally within our treaties that we have with countries. So we're working very hard at making sure that that doesn't happen and that we can go into production as soon as possible. And if that means us shooting through Christmas and through the New Year break and so on, then so be it. And we've got crews who are reliant on this work and actors, etc., that we would like to make sure that we get this project out of the gates and get the thing into the can, so we can move it off our deck, because I've got a host of other projects all banked up, mostly international co-productions. I've got a few projects with Germany and Canada. And then I have one project which I was going to do as a co-production with Canada, which I am now looking to do as a wholly South African project, which is called White Lie. So the National Film and Video Foundation is one of the partners in that project. The National Empowerment Fund will be one of the partners in the project. And we're looking to close that so we can go into production in the first quarter or latest April, May of 2021. And then I'm doing one co-venture with the US, which is with very well-known actress. She's also producing alongside with myself and with Roger Collins, a producer out of Los Angeles, with Leanne Summers, another producer from South Africa but based in Los Angeles. And last but not least, we also have a big TV series that we have in development, and hopefully we're going to get greenlit soon in that international co-pro. So that's what I'm doing right now, Cindy. In terms of the process with the NEF, I think between Joel and what Andres has already highlighted here earlier, I don't think there's much more I can add, other than to say to those who haven't gone through these processes, it's similar to the IDC. I've had 4 films financed with the IDC previously, so it's very similar structures, and just there may be quite a number of hoops to jump through, but it's just about plugging away, getting everything in place that needs to be in place in terms of the paperwork to ensure that you have everything there. But the most importantly is you're going to have your distribution, or at least an avenue to distribution via your sales agents internationally, since you're not going to get necessarily a distribution deal internationally off the bat, or to have maybe a broadcast or pre-sales involved. So, in a nutshell, Cindy, I don't know if there's any questions that you have for me other than that, but there we go.
Much appreciated, Maynard, and we appreciate the value of long-standing relationships in the sense that even with future projects, you've decided to still collaborate with the National Empowerment Fund and other funders, and you've broadened your footprint outside the borders of the country and giving us much publicity, but with the aim of bringing back the value chain and production into the country to create employment. So we really appreciate your testimonial. And we're going to go to Marisha Motlejwana, who's a managing director for Dream Vision Pictures. Marisha, thank you for joining us. And what has your experience been with the national empowerment and you pursuing your dream of having a feature film and all the stress and thrills and chills that comes with it?
Thank you so much. Thank you for just having me come through and speak. And yes, it's actually been such a fruitful session, just hearing from everybody. And I really just do appreciate the initiative that NEF has kind of brought on board for all of us to be part of this and start having these kind of conversations, which are absolutely necessary. Without sort of stretching too much into what Maynard's also already touched on in terms of just some of the challenges and so on. Let me just give you a little bit of a background in terms of our film. It's called In the Scheme of Things. It's been quite a long journey with the film, and we have basically, we came through the DTI, we've been working with the ECDC as well, because we shot the film, say 80% of the film in the Eastern Cape in East London, to give it you know, sort of that beautiful coastal feel. And what we did is we set up some interns on the production as well to have some skills transfer on the project, and use some local suppliers as well, just in terms of, you know, bringing up the area in terms of bringing them up to speed with how the film industry works. So we worked with the city at large. We then had brought on NEF as a funding partner, and the journey has been quite long, but I can reiterate that the team there is quite supportive. They're very open-minded in terms of trying to bring ease to the process. I think that we can all, you know, talk about the red tape for days, but, you know, as much as it's part of a necessary part of the process, what they've done, and I worked with the team between Nomazizi and Andres, and they like to customize the, you know, the experience for each individual and what your film needs, and depending on what it is that you want to do with the film. So I think just maybe leaving it at a point of encouragement, I just wanted to say to fellow filmmakers that you need to exercise a lot of patience. As a first-time feature for us, I've got a lot of television experience as a line producer. I was listening to IPO and they say that there aren't a lot of Black female line producers. I can actually attest to that. So I've, you know, I generally, my day-to-day income, I have to still sustain myself, but I have a huge interest in migrating into the film world. And it's quite a journey. So it's quite lengthy. You have to exercise a lot of patience, be open to learning, and we're still on our own learning curve as well. We have to still complete the film, and we're looking forward to really great prospects in terms of taking it into a market for, what's this for? Sorry, I'm a little distracted. We really want to take it out into, test it out on markets for festivals, and then tap into an international market, and you know, considering a couple of international co-pros as well. So I really just want to encourage that people need to have also a creative approach in terms of how to maximize the experience locally. There's a couple of challenges that I think that have been raised on the platform now as well. The SWOT analysis from IP, I think, was very beneficial in terms of understanding the South African landscape for filmmaking is a vital part of it. But if you have aspirations to go outside of there, you know, understand what the international market is looking for as well. And I think that that's been a huge learning curve for us. I think that pertaining back just to our experience with NEF is that They have basically come in as a supportive partner to just see the film into fruition so that we're able to test it in these various platforms. And I think for that, we are quite grateful. One of the biggest challenges that we've experienced, I think it's fair that we highlight these things for each other as colleagues in industry. The acquisition of the bond is quite a process, and I think everything generally is. For a lot of line producers who live in this space of our industry, we are sort of used to a certain linear way of working with, TV formats. And this requires for you to almost step out of it and start understanding the business of filmmaking. And it's been a very growing experience. And we just look forward to moving forward with other aspects and platforms of funding, so that we can actually just, grow in the stride of growing the industry as a whole. But yeah, so I really just want to encourage everyone just to practice patience, and I think be open-minded to learning, because it is quite a grueling experience, but a very growing one. And I think that the more conversations we have like this, the better it's going to be for the industry to basically find funding structures that are suitable for our sort of economic structures as well. It has to speak to it, because in the duality of having to balance personal life and trying to be a filmmaker for cinema is quite a tough journey to embark on, but it's one that's definitely worth it. And yeah, I'm just looking to growing with NEF and all the other funding platforms that we've engaged with as well.
Marisha, thank you so much for sharing your experience, and we hope that it will be a joyful ride. But I just want to pick up on what you had said, and I think this is where, as creatives, when you have this wonderful idea that you see on billboards or at box offices churning out millions and millions, and seeing your name in accolades around film festivals around the world, we need to realize that the process in itself is not an overnight process, as it were. And at the National Empowerment Fund, by your own testimonial, is that there's something that we call the power of three. So if we're able to answer a phone call after 3 rings, or we're able to address a certain query in 3 hours, with the application process is also reliant on how quickly the investee submits the documents. All right, your business plan, your proposal, the budgets, as you have done, it requires patience, but we have to do it only as much as we're supported by the investees. So in your case, you have gone through the process and you've seen it for yourself that it is doable, albeit that it is challenging as well. So Marisha Mutlejwana is the Managing Director of Dream Vision Pictures. Thank you so much for your testimonial. We're going to move on now to Menzi Tabete, Managing Director of Tabete Menzi Films, who is also in the process, or in the application process. You'll tell us your journey, Menzi. And Helen Kun, welcome to you. She's the Managing Director of Indigenous Film Distributors, who will be our next speaker. Menzi, over to you.
Hi, Cindy. Hope you are good.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm
good.
Menzi Tabete, film producer, working with Craig Hoffmeyer, Leon Schuster, and as well Sanjeev here, and other scholars. For sure, we have submitted 2 projects at NEF, and so far, so good with the way NEF, they are dealing with things and whatnot. The process is being long a bit, but we are getting there. We are getting there. We are like I said, we are doing 2 movies with NEF. One is for Mnet and the other one is for Netflix. I would like to highlight just a few of what our colleagues have said here, starting with Mpho with regards to getting back their money and investing in commercial viable projects. I think personally, it is still a long way to go for investors, to get back their money, especially if we don't invest again in marketing, because marketing becomes a crucial thing or a crucial aspect of any production. What is the use of like investing 10 million and not have anything for marketing? And again, we want people to go to cinema and watch the movies and whatnot. But if people they haven't heard anything about the movie, how would people go to cinema? I think we need to also look at marketing our movies, you know, and try to invest more on marketing our movies. I'm sure Mayenze and Sanjeev will agree with me on that. We have little funds towards marketing. For example,
Menzi, there's just a request, and I do hate to interrupt you.
Yes.
Yazi thina sikhuliswe kahle umuntu bakakhulu masivamanga ukuthi simngene emlonyeni kodwa
Yebo, mama.
there's a request yebo ukuthi if une presentation okanye sikubone sikubuke ngamehlo ukuthi ngempela umuntu ophilayo because okwamanje asiboni lutho
Okay.
umuntu wenkosi ngicela
Okay.
ungisize. My performance
right.
bonus depends on this. Thank you.
Okay, mama. Okay, let me try to. Can you see me? I'm sure. Hi. Cindy, can you see me?
We can see you. Go ahead. Thank you.
Yes, yes, yes. So I think, you know, personally, I haven't had any problems with NEF, you know, or IDC or DTI or any other investors. But I have a strong feeling that the reason why our movies don't make money is because we lack marketing. You know, we lack money for marketing. What is the use of producing Handy Andy but not promoting it? Who will know about Handy Andy, you know? So I think my focus will be mainly on marketing and making sure paying back our investors. There's no filmmaker or film investors who doesn't want to pay back their investors, you know. Yes, we want to produce movies that are commercial viable. We want to produce movies that shows economic merit, you know. But there's still a lot of work that needs to go to marketing, more than just creating a movie, you know, and say, yes, I have produced the movie for this. For example, I'm doing another project about one of the mining magnate. You know, the movie costs almost like 150 million, but I can tell you 30% of that is going to go towards marketing. Let me say 30% of the total movie budget is going to go towards marketing. So I think we need like to really look at how can we invest more on marketing as well, rather than investing on a product. Thank you. I'm done.
All right, thank you so much. So if there's anything else, please go onto the chat platform. There are a few questions if you're able to do so, even on social media. And I know that this industry has got so much potential because South Africa, the continent, is well endowed with talent. So as you rise, you lift another person, as we're trying to do at the National Empowerment Fund, growing Black economic participation. And we are really grateful and humbled by the response that we've received, including our participants' engagement. Helen Kun, you've been so patient. You've been here earlier on, and thank you for staying the duration of the course. You are with Indigenous Film Distributors. Helen Kun is the managing director there. Thank you again for participating. Your presentation starts now, and you have 10 minutes. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much. I just want to double check if you guys can see my screen.
There's a bit of a delay, so I'm not seeing anything on my side as yet. While we're uploading your screen, how are you? You know, sometimes we just hop into things. There we've lost the courtesy of just saying, hello, how are you? Are you well? You know? Kan ek vir jou 'n drukkie gee?
I think, you know, I hope everybody's well. But yes, we are chugging along like I think everyone has been doing during this tough time with the virus.
Yes.
But so thank you for the opportunity to participate.
Yes.
And
Can you confirm, Helen, sorry, we're just still trying to find your screen. I just want to just establish this, that you are the Indigenous Film Distributors responsible largely on placing finished products on, you know, platforms such as Netflix, Showmax, and etc.
Yes, I think just a brief overview of what we do. We particularly focus on local content. We're a boutique distributor, so we particularly focus on South African content and African content when we can access African content, and then the imperative of the business is to release the films, because we feature film focused, not necessarily television or series or reality or whatever else that sits with the broadcasters, on as many platforms as possible. So cinema, DSTV box office, Mnet, SABC, ETV, Netflix, whatever platform exists that we can sell to or deliver a film to an audience to in Africa. If the film fits that audience, is what we would strive to do for every film. So all films don't necessarily fit on all platforms naturally. So it is it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, but we can only deliver onto platforms that exist. I mean, interestingly enough, the NEF initiative around the drive-ins is going on at the moment that Sanjeev mentioned earlier on. We're doing quite a lot of work with them at the moment, because local films are actually one of the kinds of content you can supply to them in a different format than DCP. And until such time as the drive-ins have DCP facilities, they're going to battle to get content from elsewhere. So that's what we do. I think the difference between us and AAA, for instance, is that AAA focuses on the world and global sales, and we focus on Africa and in particular the local market.
I just want to confirm that I can see hidden slides on my side, and maybe others can too.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah,
so we'll be
can
quick. Okay, thanks, Manzeki. So we'll be quick, because I'm sure everybody has, people have covered so much ground already. I think it's been highly informative. So there will be some duplication here around the size of the industry and the impact based on the PwC and the NEF studies in the last few years. I think it's blatantly obvious to all of us that the critical growth point would be to deliver content to Black audiences in particular. And though the cinemas are taking strain, again, as Sanjeev mentioned, they are really running at 25% of the box office takings than compared to what it was before. It should normalize at some point. And in the interim, we all have to continue creating content, because obviously cinema is a critical part, but it's not the only part. So there's just a little bit of an overview. There's over 400 production companies on this community, but very few, or a handful, I would say, really focus on feature films. And part of that is obviously based on having a mix of content as a production company that you can in fact make a living, because ultimately, as much as it is a creative industry, it does have to deliver returns. So this is just a 5-year overview of, or a little bit longer, of the number of titles. This is based on cinema releases that have released annually and the number of those that were local. You can see that it's consistently been sitting at between 20 and 25 titles annually. And it just goes up and down. It's going to be interesting to see what happens next year. And it's important to understand here that this only tracks cinema releases. So anything that was made as a straight to Netflix or a straight to Mzansi or a straight to any other platform film does not report on an industry centralized database for us to be able to give you a summary in that regard. Much of this is taken from the NEF studies. So you can find that on their website as well. And just a note on the years that have the high percentage of local content market share, that is generally off the back of 1 or 2 breakout films. So you either would have had a Leon Schuster film or a Kandasamis or a Happiness doing significant business, which would be why those particular years are pushed up to 11% versus the average of 6% that the content runs at generally. So this is, we focus on 2 areas, distribution and then development. Development is fairly new for us. We could only start with that when Tande Kazwana joined our team, because we didn't have the skills to do that. So that's a very strong focus for us going forward. But the backbone of the business has been, for the last 11 years, distribution. We've released just over 120 titles, locally produced titles in this time. This is how we see ourselves going forward in partnership with the industry, of course. It's a team sport, filmmaking. It's absolutely impossible to do it by yourself. So we rely heavily, obviously, on all the creatives from the inception of storytelling right through to the technical ability to deliver production value, and then it's a hand-in-hand process by the time we deliver it to audiences on the various platforms. And in line with what we're all trying to do as an industry is we want the content to travel to other territories. So we work with AAA a great deal in that regard. Unless they tell us the film is never going to sell, then obviously we will listen. But our focus remains local territory. These are the kinds of films that we classically can participate with if we invest in films, which we do on a limited basis, but it is necessary to secure a content flow of mixed genres going forward. So in an ideal world, this would be the mix we would like as a distributor in a given year. That's not necessarily always how it pans out because we are highly dependent on what gets made. In fact, we don't survive if you guys are not making films. So, and we don't survive if the IDC and the NEF and Mnet and Netflix and NFEF and GFC and EDC, if everybody's not participating, it would be impossible for a distributor to make a living from local content because it is the only thing we represent. Just some examples of people we work with frequently. Increasingly so, we're trying to find content that can travel on the continent rather than play only in South Africa. But our storytellers are very brave and make films that end up having quite high age restrictions. So that makes it a little bit tough in the rest of Africa. You know, it's kudos to our creatives, but if something is not sort of clean family entertainment, it's quite tough to get it released in other territories in Africa. So, you know, the 18 SNLV, PK, whatever kind of films find it hard to find a home in the rest of Africa. Just on when we invest and, you know, what we've deducted from how filmmakers make films over time, taking into account the DTI rebate or potential grants from the other government agencies, not necessarily the recoupable ones, the reality is very much in line with what the NEF recommends around recoupable money for films and soft funding. And what I call local are films that we find are popular locally, but they are unlikely to travel. It goes to the comedy note that Sanjeev raised before. Comedies, rom-coms, action that consistently remains in the top performing titles in the territory, but it doesn't mean that a film like a Five Fingers for Marseille or Ngaiba can't find a decent market. So we would classify that as a world cinema title. Just an idea of the volume of what comes through our either online portal or directly from meetings and engagements with filmmakers. We assess on average around 250 to 300 projects in a year, of which, interestingly enough, and this is kind of in line with the rest of the world, 1 in 10 is likely to actually make it into production. So it's a pretty tough industry that we're all in. It's not for the faint-hearted, I'm afraid. And we don't have a particular thing about an emerging filmmaker versus an emerged or more experienced filmmaker. We'll assess everything, but obviously we aim to surround filmmakers through our networks of people with experience if they are less experienced when the project comes to us initially. Just some highlights of people that we have worked with in the past and will continue to work with. Obviously, these are not the only ones. It just refers to projects that are recent or current or going forward. Seriously Single was going to be a theatrical release. COVID struck, so it ended up being a Netflix worldwide deal. We've got a great film coming through called Barakat from Nachvlug. That's a combination of Amy Jefta and Ephraim Gordon plus the No Fanon guys in South Africa. So we try to help the films to find a home in the rest of the world with AAA, or if it doesn't fit their profile, or we'll look at other alternatives. We've got an animated film in production at the moment. This is really a rare find. As you know, this would only be the 5th locally produced animated film. So it's got a great sales agent attached that also co-invested in the film called SC Films internationally. So we work with Ergo a lot. We've had numerous projects from them, and as you can see, they are pretty focused on the rom-com side. Yellowbone, that you are all very familiar with, very generally quite focused on world cinema, but award-winning titles. So they've just completed their TV series, and we have another film called Valedictory coming through from them. Uruku, an interesting film producing company because they're pretty focused on Africa, not just South Africa. So of these 4 films, only 2 are South African, the other one is from Mozambique, and this is not a burial, it's a resurrection, is from Lesotho. So it will be Lesotho's first submission to the Academy Foreign Language category ever. They've never had one. In post-production at the moment is New Material, which is the sequel for Material, which was, can you believe it? It's already 11 years ago. So that's due to go out next year in March. And then, as I mentioned, obviously, with AAA, because they both produce and sell. Some projects we collaborate on, other projects we will distribute and they will sell. And then obviously we have some of our own and they have some of their own. And lastly, just the team. We're a small team. It's pretty specialized. Everybody's an expert. And then we work and partner with whatever service provider, whether it's on a design side or a production side or a marketing side, for each film as it is necessary for the films. That's one of the reasons why we are highly unlikely to ever do more than 10 to 12 films in a year. And that's the distribution landscape for the moment. It may be interesting for people to know just on the cinemas. At the moment, some of the sites have closed for November and will reassess again at the end of November whether they continue trading. Many other sites are only doing 3 shows a day. So they start at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and they play until the 8 o'clock shows. Some sites are not open on Mondays at all anymore. So I think the whole cinema landscape really is going to look quite different when it functions properly again into the future. But luckily for content creators, there are various platforms and we just have to consistently look at all of those to find the best home for every film.
Helen, thank you so much again for your patience and also your insightful and powerful presentation. We're speaking with colleagues here to say, you know, some of the comments we hear from creatives is that this is stifling creativity. It's not emboldening our passion as writers and filmmakers and dampening the spirit of what it is to be a dreamer and to see things in technicolor, excuse the pun. But I think for today's exercise was the fact that you need to understand the entire value chain and which players, you know, who does what and where to go to develop a concept, for example, in an incubation stage or to go for pre-production, etc., until you have your product out on the market. So I think that's where we're going to have to leave it, folks. Again, thank you so much for your participation. May I please request that all our speakers share your presentations with your contact person at the National Empowerment Fund. You can just email them individually, that will upload on our website, and including this recording as well. May you be abundantly blessed and continue to make South Africa great. We really appreciate your time. Our next webinar here on NEF Business TV will be on the 19th of November, and that will be on social housing, construction, and the property sector. So do join us then. For myself, Cindy Mabi, and the technical crew, it's cheers for now.
Thanks, Cindy. You were a great moderator. I think everyone's giving you a little clap in the background individually, but thank you. You were great.
Oh, thank you, Nobuntu. Just as a mutual admiration society, I just want to say I totally loved having all of you and your participation. And Nobuntu, I am just concerned that you might just be the next presenter for NEF Business TV. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge. Thanks, everybody.
They've got a good girl in you. They don't need me.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, everybody. We'll definitely be in touch, and may you continue your great work. Thank you.
Thank you.